All right, it's Monday, May 20th, 6:03 PM, and I'm calling the Groton Board of Education Committee of the whole meeting to order. The first item is the review of the May 13th meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Sorry. Okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes. Next, we have our literacy update.
All right, just
Thank
give
you,
me a
Phil.
minute, and I'll see if we can make sure all of our...
We also have
Yes.
Stephanie from the Hill coming in to answer questions, I believe.
Yeah, I will say, I apologize, I was away for most of the weekend. We did get your questions, and I thought it would be best to just bring her in, and graciously, she was available. I just contacted her. I'm sure she just got the message this morning, and she was able to join us. So hopefully that will answer some questions about the rubric and some of the scoring, and then so we can focus with the committee on the different programs. So let me just see.
All right, sounds good.
You got them all? And I'll share my screen as well. Okay.
I'm with you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I don't see her yet.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Don't you usually?
No.
All right, we're just waiting for, get Stephanie on here.
Were we going to do the first couple slides and then have?
Here she comes. All right, yeah, I just wanted to make sure she was in the room.
Okay.
Hi, Stephanie. I'll just introduce you really quickly, and then we'll do a little introductory couple slides, but I just wanted to introduce Stephanie Gonzalez to our Board of Ed. Stephanie is the representative from the Hill for Literacy that's been facilitating the evaluation process. If you just want to say hello and any other information about yourself that you think we should know.
Hi, good afternoon. No, I think that about sums it up. I'm happy to be here.
All right, and I really do appreciate you joining us, Stephanie.
Sure.
So just before we get into to address some of the questions that came up over the weekend, just a brief intro. This is stuff that, again, we've reviewed with the board before, just a little timeline of our activities. Back in January, we had a literacy leadership team which visited some local schools that were using the different programs that we were considering. We began the process with the Hill back in February, and then in March we did an overview and review of Wit and Wisdom as part of the compendium along with Hegarty and UFly, and then we did an overview and review of EL education as well. And I think I shared last, it was 10 full hours with each program using that rubric that the board was given to go through every aspect of the curriculum. Our committee, like I've said before, is made up of 30 people from across the district, elementary administrators as well as elementary teachers and literacy specialists from all grade levels across all the buildings, worked with the Hill to do those reviews. And then here we are in May making our recommendation for the Tier 1. Hopefully we had a great conversation with the curriculum subcommittee, and now we hope to sort of duplicate that here tonight on a larger scale with the full board. We have members here that are present. We have members online as well. And like I said, we have a representative from the Hill. As you know, we reviewed these two programs, which you were able to see the data. And our recommendation, superintendent's recommendation, is to proceed with Wit and Wisdom. So up on the screen right now, if you remember, 3, 6, 9, 10, must be one more box. Okay, there's 11 aspects of the curriculum that we looked at. And I'll let Lisa take it over from here, just to sort of go through these. You saw some of the categories in, on the sheet. And these are, like I said, we took the committee of 30 people. We broke down to approximately, 10 people per group, and then we each took 3 or 4 of these to do the deep dive. And then we brought it all together to share our findings.
Okay, so I'll just quickly explain the different subcategories. So when we talked about instructional design, that's basically the way that the resource is organized, as well as suggestions for differentiation and sustained education. In terms of phonological awareness, that's one of the foundations for reading. That's the ability to hear sounds spoken orally. When we look at phonics, that's learning the reading code, being able to understand the connection between spelling patterns and the sounds that they make. We also assessed for fluency. Fluency is being able to read the text with the intent that the author has written it, in terms of pacing, parsing, and reading with prosodic cues. So pacing, how fast or how slow you're reading, but also how automatic you are when it comes to your word recognition. Parsing is scooping up your words, using punctuation to help you read in phrases and longer sentences. And reading with prosodic cues is matching your voice to the characters or the tone within the text. Vocabulary is understanding that more sophisticated book language rather than just the way we have conversations with each other. Also making sure kids understand really that kind of content-specific language as well that they're going to come across in nonfiction. In terms of comprehension, we were scoring for literal comprehension, which also leads to inferential comprehension, which ultimately can lead to analytical comprehension. And that was done in a variety of different ways and was assessed in a variety of different ways, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Culturally responsive and sustaining education is making sure that the instruction and the resources honor all children and that all children's backgrounds are valued. Motivation and engagement, how active are our children throughout the curriculum, active participants. In terms of assessments, what are the assessments needed to really understand how our children are progressing within the realm of reading? All the way from phonological awareness, can we assess to see if our children can in fact hear individual sounds orally, to blending sounds together in words. Assessments also for writing, and assessments for comprehension, to get to really to the heart of our children able to not only understand and communicate their ideas with each other, but also write about those ideas. Listening and speaking, can students communicate their ideas and grow their ideas orally with one another? And then in writing, structure of the genre, which would be narrative, opinion, or persuasive, or informational, and grammar and mechanics. So those were the different subcategories. Ooh. Sure. Nobody's ever said I'm quiet before.
Right.
That's a shocker.
Something
I'm
new.
so excited. Okay, thank you.
I never thought I'd say that. Speak up, Lisa.
So those were the subsections that were on our tool that we evaluated, both wit and wisdom and EL education.
And so from there, we shared the data with the board. This was one of the main things that we want to look at, but we also shared the actual detailed rubric with the board as well. So that's where I'm going to sort of ask, I'm going to stop sharing just so we can see Stephanie on the screen. But Stephanie, maybe you can take, there were definitely some questions, and I shared those with you from the board, just about the layout, and I'm sure the board can chime in to give you more detail. But it wasn't, there were some questions on the people that actually worked on it, so I can only imagine for somebody seeing it for the first time. So however you feel best it is to sort of walk them through what they were looking at would be really helpful.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Can I share my screen so that we're all kind of looking at the same items?
Do you have the ability, can you see that?
I believe so.
Great.
Oh, there she goes.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. So this is a copy of the results spreadsheet. So what you're seeing here are the kind of overall percentages side by side. But then I think where a lot of the questions came was kind of digging into the individual program tabs. So I want to explain one thing. Where you're seeing combined, sometimes a district's review team is so large that we actually use multiple spreadsheets. In Groton, we had one. So really it is the same spreadsheet because we're not combining it with others. So if there was a question about that, there's your answer. What you're seeing in J, so in this kind of final column, this is the total possible points. So in order to derive the percentages in this table, we are looking at the percentages in yellow here. These are for each section, so let me scroll up to one. So in this case, this is vocabulary. So for every section of the 12 that Dr. Piazza just walked us through, we get this total percentage. And the total percentage is not an average of averages per se. It's actually taking the scores for K through 6, so the total of these, and dividing it by the total possible number of points. So I think that's where when I was scanning those questions, that's where some of those questions were coming from.
Okay, maybe we can just pause there.
Sure.
And is that clarifying? Or are there any questions based off of what she just said?
I have a question.
Sure, Bev, go ahead.
Why are some of the boxes empty? What does that mean?
Yes, that's a great question. Boxes that are grayed out are not intended to be completed for a variety of reasons. If we scroll up to phonemic awareness, we see a lot, or hearing even in fluency. It's because that domain of reading may not be as applicable to a particular grade level. So for example, in fluency, we see a lot of items grayed out for kindergarten because we're not thinking a lot about fluency at that grade level. That is a reading skill that develops over time. Once those foundational skills are accurate, then we can really start shifting to fluency. So anytime you see a grayed out box, it's because it wasn't required for that particular grade level. It may also not have been required for the SI column. I think that was a question.
Can you tell me what SI means? Can you tell me what SI means?
Yeah, so SI is for strategic and intensive interventions. So when we're talking about our advanced tiers, sometimes we talk about them as tier 2 or tier 3, but we can also think about them as strategic or intensive intervention.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. My name's Adrian. So I guess on what we were given, there's no grayed out areas, so which made it a little bit confusing for us. And then separately, why are there no zeros in the spreadsheet?
So I'm wondering if sometimes when you transfer things from Microsoft Excel to Google Sheets, the formatting goes a little wonky. So I do wonder if maybe that's where the graying out
Yeah, I
error
don't
occurred.
think the gray boxes, they just look like blank white boxes.
Okay.
I'm
Then
not sure
that's
about the
likely what-
zero.
No, the zeros also came up as blank boxes.
And that's okay. So quantitatively, we're treating blanks as zeros. So anytime that data is not counted, that's reflected in this total number. Like in this row, only 2 grade levels, it only applies to 3 grade levels. So it's a total of 9 points. So in the formulas, it's accounted that way, and when teachers and educators are completing the rubric, they're seeing them as grayed out. But anytime that there's a zero, it's a zero or a blank is considered zero numerically.
Okay, so that still counts for the total, though, the zeros.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. This is the total possible.
So that makes sense. It's just impossible for us to know, for a specific grade level, if it got a zero, so that specific question, like the program didn't do a good job on that skill, or if it was not
Or if it was not
applicable, which are
expected for that.
two very different meanings.
I think you have to look at the total number of possible points that you would get, denominator, because that would tell you if that blank is actually, like the example she gave, there were 3 threes that would add up, that would be 9 total points. So those others are shaded in because the denominator would be, total amount of points would be 9. So that would be the way that you could decipher a zero between a not applicable.
Yeah, in a different sheet, not the one that we have.
Oh, it doesn't have the total?
It doesn't, it has a total, but it doesn't have any difference between 0 and gray. There's no zero.
Right, but if the
there's no-
total is 21, then you know that it includes all the.
Correct,
Yeah.
but some of them, it'll say 21 and none of the boxes were filled out.
That would be zeros.
So that would mean they were all zeros.
All right, well,
I know,
No.
it's.
yeah, I mean,
Difficult.
we can say that, but there's a lot of areas where it could be 0 or grayed out in multiple grades, you just don't know.
Any suggestions about that, Stephanie? I know there was a lot of conversation in the teams about that and what that meant, and I know that one program was comprehensive and one had a compendium. So, like with the phonics area with UFly, we've really designed it to spread out K-3. But in 4 and 5, we've used it for intervention, special education, and where it's needed. But it's not necessarily the program for grades 4 and 5, from what I understand. But I wasn't knee-deep in the process, so.
And Stephanie, I guess the important thing is the box at the beginning, the red and green, those numbers were not affected by anything. Those are as accurate as possible, even though the rubrics below, the more detailed rubrics are a little confusing.
Yes, yes. So generally, this is the table that we look at when we're debriefing the results, discussing the results. We start here. The graph is helpful. It's just another way to look at this information. And like I said, when we're looking at multiple tools, if there are 3 or 4 or 5 rubrics that we're pulling together to combine for ultimate results, then this spreadsheet goes on and on and on with all of those results.
Right.
But again, numerically, a 0 and a blank is going to result in the same information.
Well, it wouldn't result in the same information, right?
Right. Right, a 0 is saying that it's missing, but a blank is meaning that it's not measured in that category, right? So it's a little different.
Yeah, one would carry
No,
negative
a
connotation.
gray means
and
that
one
it
would not.
wasn't measured.
A gray.
A blank, right. So actually, when we're teaching educators this process, we do recommend that all boxes be complete. We really don't want blanks, like here in this blue, for that reason, because then we don't know, was this item you didn't get to, or is it really a 0? But again, numerically, the a blank is going to be treated the same way as a 0. If it's grayed out, then that is not part of the total.
All right.
Jay?
Yeah, I've got Matthew, then Beverly, when you're, are you,
Yeah, I just have one more question. How do we know what grade so for me, it would be nice to have a percentage like first grade or kindergarten or second grade rated this program, at 80%, where fifth grade rated a program at 60%. How would we know that by looking at this spreadsheet, like which grades any given program excelled in or maybe, missed the mark?
I think you could look down the columns if you wanted to and look at what kindergarten first, second grade said. With that said, though, the teams did not necessarily reflect like a kindergarten teacher or first grade teacher. Our teams were built actually around the topic areas and were designed to include folks from kind of different stakeholder groups. So classroom teachers, specialists, we had mixed teams intentionally. So this was really the lens through which they were looking, but they were not necessarily first grade teachers. And I'm looking at Lisa, I think you're nodding, if that was accurate. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I think during the conversation, maybe the teachers will be able to speak, more directly to this.
But just to be clear, so somebody grading kindergarten might have been, like the kindergarten curriculum might have been in a fifth grade teacher or something like that. That's the way this worked
Or
out.
an interventionist or a
Any-
principal, but they're really reviewing the actual documents, and they're guided by that, so it's not like just, oh, I love the program. So they're really looking in depth at what they're seeing in front of them.
There was a literacy
matches.
specialist in each group. There was an administrator in each group, a principal. I'm not sure, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead,
And you'd have to come to the table, though, just so you can be heard.
Yeah, this is Dave Sibilia. I was part of one of the teams. So just to address the question, there were grade level specific teachers in each group. So if there was a kindergarten question, we could check in with the kindergarten or first grade teacher that's more familiar with those certain skills appropriate to the grade level. But it wasn't like we all sat as one fifth grade group and looked at it. It was a mixed bag of teachers that then looked at the grade level components within their subgroups.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
how's that? Okay. We can come back to. All right, so I'm going to recognize Matthew, then Beverly, and then Ian.
Let me just do a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm looking at instructional design. The first page, it starts with question 1. There are 7 columns, starting with K and going to strategic intensive. And then to the right of those, there is a number, which I presumed, which is a very dangerous verb, that number was a summary score. And we're on line 1, question 1. You have 7 3s. That is, in fact, 21. You get to line 3, you have 4 3s and 2 2s, which add up to 16, and you have, it's saying 18. You turn to the third page, I'm now on item 28. For argument's sake, it shows 4 1s and 3 blanks. We don't have a blanked out square to know that. Well, I count that as 4, it says 21. Now, I'm sure there's meaning to it, but can you help me understand the meaning?
I can. So in that last column where you're seeing 21 or 16, that's just the total possible points.
Right.
So it's not summing across rows. The formula is built to consider the kindergarten through 6th grade and the SI column. And then it divides it by the total possible points, which is what that final column reflects.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
That's all for now. Thank you.
Beverly?
No, that was my question, Jay. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, sure. Ian?
Thank you. So, yeah, my concern, to follow on Adrian's, is that while there is no numerical difference between a 0 and a gray box, there is a connotative difference. Whereas like a gray box means there is no score possible, whereas a 0 would be a negative, should be taken in a negative connotation. So it's just a little hard to decipher, and so maybe a quick remedy for this would be to email the board the Excel version of this document so that, we could kind of cross-reference for ourselves the gray boxes versus the zeros.
Sure.
I could do that.
Thank you.
Is there one of the examples that you can demonstrate that for us, Stephanie? To show how that might work out, like with what we have in front of us? Comparatively
Yes.
speaking, so that everybody here would understand it, so when they get it, they would understand that concept?
Yes, so I think I'm showing you the Excel version here. So I realize it's quite small though. So let me get bigger.
So with that one that we see, the grayscaled all the way through, the only total possible points are 3.
Correct.
So you really
Because
got
it
3
only
out of
applies-
3.
That's right.
So is there an example of where the zeros might fit in so that you can see what are the total points and how do the zeros then impact? So there's
Sure.
one, there's nothing.
So further down, yeah, so further down, it was rated with zeros by educators. And then for some reason, they didn't, again, carry over. They carried over as blanks, which is why I'm saying zeros and blanks are numerically the same. So there was a total of 21 possible points. It was rated as 0 across the board. So
So it would be
It's
0 out of 21
Just make sure you can
Correct.
access it.
versus mathematically, the other situation was getting the total points. So it was, 9 over 9, so it would equal 1 whole instead of 0. I'm just doing it mathematically. I was a middle school teacher, math teacher. So isn't that true if we go back to the other example, how that's different? I think that just helps to be able to understand it better. So in this scenario, we would have gotten 3 out of 3.
correct. And that's what this is reflecting, 3 out of 3.
Instead of
So
0
like
out of
100%
21.
agreement.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think just being able to see the gray boxes, that's the
Yeah,
the
it
big
probably
difficulty is
would
that it
help.
came out. So
Yeah.
that's my bad because the copier didn't pick up the gray. Not sure why.
All right, so now, Phil, thank you. Everyone's been emailed the Excel spreadsheet, so
Yep, that's better.
if you want to be able to refer to that.
And so I think, you can, obviously peruse that throughout the meeting. Do we want to go back to that overall totals,
Yeah, I think we
Stephanie?
should.
And then, I would, the next part of our presentation was to sort of invite the committee to the table, literally, and just, they can begin by maybe explaining, kind of walking us through what this is saying, and then just to answer any questions that the board
I
might
think there were some
have.
good questions from the board also indicating that in wisdom, there were 4 areas where it was less than EL, but I would say that we asterisked writing because it was only 1 percentage point off and it was 90 and 91%. So that, to me, is a moot point. But then the others, certainly there was a lot of discussion around when those came in less and how we could make up the difference for that. So I think that is good for the teachers and you all to discuss.
And Stephanie, if you want to, you can pull your screen down. Again, I don't want to hold you longer than we have to, because again, you were very gracious to be able to join us. I'm not sure if there's other questions based on that scoring grid.
I do see that Matthew has his,
And then I'm going to reshare my screen so I can share the same data.
okay. Matthew?
Thank you. Yes, that was, I think, the most important question. I wanted to understand the spreadsheets a little bit more, but that's kind of incidental. We trust the team. And it's pretty clear to this pilgrim that wit and wisdom is the more robust of the two. Having said that, there are 3 areas where wit and wisdom significantly, I don't know if that's a statistical word, just take it as an emotional word, trailed EL education. Those were fluency, instructional design, and assessment. So my question to Stephanie, since she's kind of our guru or Sherpa through this process, is there a way to negotiate with wit and wisdom to strengthen those areas which scored weak? And is there a way that we can collaborate with them to keep the best of what they have and strengthen the stuff that was lacking? Thank you.
I'll start, but then I'll also turn it to Lisa and Phil too. So there's always a way to strengthen and enhance our instruction. And I think I would also remind us that this is not just a review of wit and wisdom, that this was a review of a compendia of programs, which included wit and wisdom, UFly, and Hegarty. So these results really do reflect those 3 programs as a compendium. I could go into lots of examples, but I'm sure you don't want too many details. Did that answer that question, or would you like a little more?
No, I'd like to, let me reframe it and see if I can get it. So let's stipulate that the board adopts wit and wisdom as the best program. We'll stipulate that for a moment. Still, we have these 3 areas that there was relative weakness. So as your experience as a consultant, what negotiating room, put that in quotes if you want, do we have available so that we can ask them to strengthen those areas where we would, we can't pick 2 from column A and 2 from column B. We got to take 1 column. So we're going to take 1 column. How do we strengthen the areas where they were weak? Will they be amenable to that?
So that's a really great question for the publisher. Usually the publisher has their program, and the program is intended to be implemented with fidelity as it's designed. As a consultant in the literacy world, there are instructional routines, there are supplements that you could use to enhance your core program. But I have not necessarily worked with a publisher who had like extra things that they would add in if that hasn't already been discussed up front.
Yeah, I would imagine if we were the only district to have this kind of sorting, that would be one thing. But, knowing the quality of the people who are on the panel, the review panel, I'm guessing that there may be other districts that notice the same thing. And okay,
If I could just interrupt for a minute, Matthew. Let me just interrupt for 1 minute. One of the things that I'm excited for you to hear and for the board to hear is what happened when the teachers actually piloted the lessons. Because one of the things that you're going to hear is that what scored a certain way on paper, when done in real life, in real time, was very different for our teachers. So, and I think Stephanie is right. I mean, we are going to be working with whatever publisher, with Wit and Wisdom's publisher, in terms of professional development and thinking about our district and making this work for our kids and our teachers. But at the same time, we want to be very careful that we are using these resources with integrity versus, again, visiting the ELA buffet and taking a little bit from here and a little bit from there. So I think you'll be really excited, Matthew, to hear what our teachers have to say, especially about those categories that you noticed.
Thank you for the clarification. I look forward to listening.
All right, so I'm going to recognize Ian and then Jen. And then Dean.
Thank you. Yeah, and this kind of follows along that line of thinking. I just wanted to be clear.
Beverly?
There's nothing prohibiting the district from bringing in like supplemental materials as they see fit, as any teacher or any administrator may see fit.
Right. And I also think there's instructional methods that you're going to be hearing a lot from in terms of our teachers, that they did in fact take the lesson plan and think about the kids that were sitting in front of them. Right, because it's not that we're just reading a script and being very robotic with it. There's an art to what our teachers were able to do with this, so.
Understood,
I think
100%, yeah.
you'll be really happy
Yeah,
with that.
delivery is,
Oh, it's everything.
95%,
And
yeah.
you're talking to another teacher, too, so he
Yeah.
gets it.
Understood.
All right, so I'm going to recognize Jen, then Dean, then Beverly. Jen.
You might have to pull it up close and turn it on.
Oh,
That-
yes.
I-
That's right.
I'm getting all these texts from Clint saying, pull it up and turn it on and speak loudly.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Matthew, in regards, like, I know you probably have the concern with that fluency number being at 59 or 70. I feel like when we're looking at this from a statistical perspective and looking at it, it's great that both EL and Wit and Wisdom had highs and lows. If all of it was good with Wit and Wisdom, as somebody reviewing this, I would suspect that, like, hey, they already prejudged it. So the fact that it's this way, you know that the professionals who reviewed it actually looked at it and made a true assessment. And in this case, when they were comparing, let's just say, fluency, they found the other program better. Doesn't necessarily make the other program worse. It's just that when they were reviewing it, they just thought there was something a little bit better, and maybe the evaluators can go through that. So it is good to see, highs and lows and the benefits and and what they perceived as benefits throughout this review process. So that's how I was viewing it, that it was like a fair assessment.
Thank you, Jen.
Welcome.
Thanks. So my question has to do with the overall comparison. There are 11 areas which you outlined, instructional design, et cetera. So we've got column A, and then we have that the average of the percentages is 77%, and then 82%. So 82% beats 77%. So column B looks better. That's premised on every single one of the 11 areas being equally weighted with every one of the other areas. Is that in fact the case, that instructional design, and I don't know how you could weigh them, but weighing them all equally is one way, but it would strike me as arbitrary, and maybe it just happens to be that way, that every single one of the 11 areas is just as important as every other of the 11 areas, literally. So, because it's possible the 77 and the 82 are close enough. With a slightly different weighting system, you could make the EL education column look better. So I'm not saying it was manipulated this way. Obviously, weighting them all the same makes it easier to tally this. Whereas weighting one area, phonics more than fluency, for example, that requires a lot of judgment, maybe more information than we have. So that's, I don't expect an answer, to be honest with you. I'm just pointing out that it's premised on an even weighting of all the areas. Is that in fact the case?
I would say, Stephanie, I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that each area is weighted equally.
Yes, that's correct.
And was that intentional in the process with the Hill for Literacy? Was that the way it was intended to be?
It is intentional,
Okay.
and our rubric is based on rubrics from the University of Florida, from Curate, from several other organizations where they have statisticians who have worked on these to ensure that, the psychometrics behind them are as sound as possible. I will say that as a team, you can think about weighing some of these items more or less than others. And I think that would be a very team-dependent or district-dependent decision if you were to do that.
I see some heads nodding, so there might have been discussion around that. So that'll be interesting to hear from the teachers, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Beverly.
Yeah. Along the line that Dean was questioning, Lisa, were there some areas on the section that had higher priority that you were looking at than other areas? You know what I'm saying? Like, did phonics, were you looking at phonics as a higher priority than fluency?
Oh,
Or were
okay.
they all
I see what you're saying, Beverly.
Yeah.
Actually, no, we didn't break it down into one subcategory being more important than the other. Specifically with the right to read legislation from the state of Connecticut in mind, they were very clear as to all the subcategories that had equal weight that needed to be found in a core ELA curriculum. So phonics didn't outweigh fluency. Right, so comprehension didn't outweigh phonological awareness. Like, everything does have an equal weight behind it because they all need to rope together for our kids to become proficient readers.
Thank you for that. When I was looking through the material, I noticed that differentiated instruction and enrichment activities were very low. On the line that Ian was asking, will you be using supplemental materials to make up for that deficit?
Let Shannon speak.
I think I'm going to turn it over to Shannon. Shannon, you want to talk a little bit to this?
And just let everybody know who you are, Shannon.
Sure. So my name is Shannon Dobney. I teach first grade at Thames River. And your question is perfect because it reminded me of an important conversation we had at our last meeting. So a lot of us were surprised when we saw the difference in score for instructional design. My group did not focus on instructional design. I focused on phonological awareness, phonics, and cultural responsiveness. But hearing that group speak, someone mentioned that like you said, the differentiation was what kind of knocked wit and wisdom below EL education, because EL education was so very clear about their differentiated instruction. So when you flip through a lesson, you'd see clear like text boxes that would say, you know, if you have students from Puerto Rico, you might mention this to them about this topic because you might be familiar with this backstory, you know, so on and so forth, and all different, just differentiation for English language learners, and all these different possible groups of students. Whereas that type of differentiation wasn't as obvious in wit and wisdom, but something I thought was interesting was coming from the culture responsive group that looked at that area. You can see that wit and wisdom scored much higher than EL education, and that is because the instructional materials and just the way that the program is designed, looking at a topic area from all different avenues, like watching a video, reading a poem, looking at a piece of art. A lot of the differentiation was kind of just built into how the program was designed, we found. And then in terms of representation, there was so many more cultural groups that were included. You know, in EL education, we saw very little, especially in the lower grades, representation across cultural groups. So it was just kind of eye-opening to think about, while wit and wisdom had less differentiation, its core was more robust, and so it's almost as if that picking and choosing differentiation wasn't as needed, which is pretty ideal coming from, you know, thinking about how you'd want to implement this as a teacher. That's what I would hope for, is that, you know, I'm accessing all my students all the time without needing to, you know, read all the right boxes and change the lesson accordingly.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm Jackie Wilson. I teach fifth grade at Mystic River. And kind of going off of what Shannon said, I got to pilot, if you will, lessons from both wit and wisdom and EL. And the wit and wisdom, all the differentiation, they had like a little bit here and there, but as you started planning the lessons, you could really see, like, as you got more in depth and got really down and dirty with the manual and went in, like, we're actually planning the lessons, you could see the differentiation in there. Whereas when we're in, like, Phil's office, going through, like flipping through so we can get on to the next question because we only have so many hours. It was kind of harder to see. But then when looking at EL, it was all lined out here, scaffold for this, scaffold for this, scaffold for that. So Wit and Wisdom, it was kind of nice because it was already kind of built in. And then by doing the lessons, it really, and Sarah Beth has come in for a few times, in my classroom as well. Some of my struggling readers who get pulled out for intervention, don't have the confidence, reading below grade level, they were able to participate in the Wit and Wisdom lessons and were confident. And part of it too, which I found amazing, was that it's not just reading a text, but there is also artwork that they're looking at. There's, we did a skit with Abbott and Costello, the Who's on First, which was all about wordplay. And so it was able to pull kids all on the same playing field, which in Groton, we have such a diverse and unique population that's one of the reasons that I really love teaching Wit and Wisdom, because I get to reach all my kids, and all of them were engaged, all of them were excited and ready to keep going with the lesson. So,
yeah. Agreed. I mean, so Sarah Beth Stoneha, reading specialist from Mystic River, and just to piggyback off of what Shannon and Jackie were saying, you could really tell that the integrity of each kiddo was really intact. And yes, so EL, there's boxes and there's helpful hints and tips and everything, but when you think about what we want to eventually do with this program, which is get away from the script and really personalize it and think about the students that are in front of us, we were like, we can do that with Wit and Wisdom, and they're not separating the kids. It's all embedded together. And then we can actually, teach the lesson and collaborate and do that work as a team. Yeah.
So can I just a thought, should we start talking about those? It feels like we've naturally moved into the subcategories. I just want to check to see if anybody else has any questions for Stephanie. This is above and beyond her workday, so I just want to be respectful of that. Any other questions for Stephanie?
Thank you, Stephanie. That was very helpful. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And Stephanie, we'll follow up. If any questions come for you, I'll just send them your way and get the answers from you, okay?
Very good. Have a great night,
Oh,
everyone.
Dean has a hand.
I do have one question, maybe we shouldn't let her go just yet.
Okay, hold on, Steph.
Stephanie, sorry.
I'm here.
Sorry.
I'm here.
That's okay.
What is critical consciousness? Do you know?
Are you looking at a specific item number?
I'm looking at under CRSC, question number 1, question number 2. They both use the phrase.
Culturally responsive and sustainable.
Right. So do the program materials promote critical consciousness? Do program materials provoke critical consciousness? What is the phrase critical consciousness?
I think the difference between these two came up with the group of educators as well. And critical consciousness, I guess, to try to answer that question, is the ability to kind of be aware of your surroundings. So in this case, of the different cultures or groups that are being depicted in materials. I think, Lisa, was it this team that was asking about the difference between those two items?
Yes.
So we did end up having a lengthier conversation, and really I encouraged educators to come to a shared understanding amongst themselves so that they could best rate the program with their understanding. So we unpacked the terms a little bit, but then it really came down to, again, their shared understanding of the term and then being able to apply that to the rating for both programs.
So I know Shannon and I can take the question back if you'd like. I know that your group was part of the culturally responsive pedagogy. Do you want to talk a little bit to what your group finally agreed to when it came to promoting critical consciousness and provoking critical consciousness? And how you went about answering that?
Sure. It's tricky to remember now because I wasn't, the way we broke up the questions, I was kind of more focused on some other questions, but since that was tricky, we talked about it as a group. Can you remind me what the language was one more time? That'll help me.
Yeah, sorry. Do program materials promote critical consciousness? Do program materials provoke critical consciousness?
I think part of what we talked about was that, like, obviously the difference between provoke and promote. So we thought that promote was maybe a little bit stronger, like, encouraging students to have their own, like, develop their own sense of critical consciousness on their own, like, leading the horse to water. Whereas, I don't remember what I said.
Provoke.
The other term.
The other, provoke.
That's funny, sorry, was, I guess, less rigorous. And that's kind of what we decided. And like you're seeing, it's kind of, it was kind of tricky for us to know the difference as well. So we did talk about it. Again, I wasn't focused on that question, but I believe that's where our discussion went, and then made sure that we revisited that when we reviewed the other program, like Stephanie mentioned. We just wanted to make sure that whichever kind of definition we led with, we were looking at it through the same lens with the other program, so that it was, equally measured against each other.
Shannon, can I add a little bit to what you were saying, and then correct me, because you were in that group. So from what I think, and I remember the conversation with Chris Christophany, the principal of CK, one of the things that we discussed was that promote was kind of teaching kids to become critically conscious, whereas like provoke was like how to get them to recognize when they needed to be conscious and when they needed to kind of speak out or for something. Is that what you remember?
Jay?
Yeah, that's right. I just couldn't remember which one was which.
Yeah.
I've got Andrea, I've got Jen, and then, were you raising your hand too? Okay.
Just ask Andrea to put.
Maybe I missed it, but I get the difference in this screen.
Yeah, but bring it closer.
Oh, sorry. I get the difference between provoke and promote, but I still don't have a clear picture of what critical consciousness is.
If I could just jump in, I looked it up here. Critical consciousness, also known as socio-political consciousness, is a pedagogical method that helps people understand the world, identify social and political contradictions, and take action against oppressive elements. It consists of three main aspects: reflection, deeply examine power structures and dynamics; agency, sense of the ability to seek and enact change in inequitable systems; and action, work individually and collaboratively to pursue emancipation from oppressive systems. That was just a quick Google search of what popped up first. I don't know if that's a fair assessment of what that term means.
This is Dave Sibilia, 5th grade at Thames River, and my group didn't have that specific question, but it did come up in a lot of conversation. And as a 5th grade teacher, we talk a lot about what being a good citizen looks like, and to us, those almost felt like synonymous. Speaking up for those that can't speak for themselves, being aware of your surroundings. How can you use critical thinking to help your own consciousness navigate social and those different types of problems that you will see in the world outside of the four walls of the school?
Understood.
So that's kind of bringing it to the level of what a child or a student might experience. And it ties in too with the social studies curriculum as well, when you think about it, the civics aspect.
And just to build off, my understanding of it is it's kind of an extension of the Socratic method of, kind of a deliberative, back and forth, discussive type of education.
Yep. And actually, Wit and Wisdom has Socratic seminars.
There's a part of Wit and Wisdom that there's a Socratic seminar.
All right, there we go.
Socrates, I believe.
So, Stephanie, thank you. I don't
Yes,
want to
thank
keep
you
you
very
any
much.
longer. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for
Stephanie.
your time.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone.
Night.
And Jen?
Well, I was going to say thanks to Google, but the way, the way I was taking that, it was as an individual, the promote is that when you're in a situation, right, because everyone has their own paradigm, and that you're able to understand that, like, hey, we didn't all grow up differently, and being able to say, like, okay, I shouldn't necessarily think my point of view is right, because, like, that other person just may not be aware. So that's how I was thinking promote. And then provoke is how, now that I understand, like, the core, how do I make it better, or how do I challenge the norm? That's how I was reading it.
Yep.
And that's how, so, but thanks to Google, that was much better.
Okay, so do we want to talk a little bit about the subcategories? We've already kind of started with the blue group in terms of instructional design, comprehension, assessment, and writing. Do you want to talk a little bit about, beyond what you've already discussed, what did we notice in Wit and Wisdom that we liked? Why did we think Wit and Wisdom over EL? What did you notice when you were actually doing the piloting of the lessons in the classroom?
And just an interesting note before we have multiple members of the blue group here, but we did notice that 3 out of the 4 categories that the blue group looked at were the ones that were in the red for Wit and Wisdom. One of those is writing, which we sort of denoted as, not a significant difference. It was 91% to 90%, but it was just an interesting finding. So I think they'll be able to speak to that.
Do I have to press this button?
No, it's on.
it's already-
You're good, Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Chasen. I'm a literacy specialist at Charles Barnum. And I just wanted to say that this has been a really interesting experience for me. I have been part of curriculum reviews for many different programs, but this is the first time I've used a rubric like this and this tool. And while some of our findings, as I'm a part of this controversial group here, but while our findings may have conflicted some, I will say that it was really beneficial to go through the tool because it lent to a deeper understanding, and you really looked at the programs with a closer eye. And what we found is that EL looked really good on paper. But then when we went to implement it, that we noticed that it was not quite as easy for teachers to access, which in turn, my fear as a literacy specialist, will not be as accessible for all of our students as well. So I think ease for teachers to implement this program is really paramount to me. And I have a statement here from one of the second grade teachers. She and I kind of played around with some of the lessons from both of the programs, and so this is a statement from her. Her name is Laura Baker. She works in second grade at Charles Barnum with me. I worked with the Blue team on instructional design, writing, assessment, and comprehension. One area that stuck out for us was instructional design. Although EL education had more defined sections that involved differentiation and scaffolding, when actually putting these ideas into practice, they were not as clear as I expected. I taught a week of each program, and I found Wit and Wisdom to have a differentiation embedded into the lessons. The suggestions that the program made were easy to follow and very effective with the students. Overall, I feel that Wit and Wisdom is a more organized and easy to follow curriculum. In Groton, elementary schools have been inconsistent with curriculum, and I feel it has had to do with the management or the implementation of the programs that we have been using. When piloting EL education, the materials were difficult to locate, and the multiple books made it hard to follow. The Wit and Wisdom website and materials are easy to navigate and engaging to the students. I think that Wit and Wisdom will provide the consistency that we need for all of our students and that they deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I
Yeah.
go back off of that? So Jackie Wilson again. So I want to go along with that because when I was planning both of those programs, I did find EL. I was all excited. I was like, "Ooh, this is going to be the one." But then when I started to go to teach it, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, where's this? Where's this again?" And it was so much more time than going through Wit and Wisdom. It just boom, boom, boom. Everything's right there. And then, especially as an elementary teacher, I don't just teach ELA. I teach social studies, I teach science, I teach math, I teach kids how to tie their shoes in 5th grade. We have all these other things that we're doing, and so the time that it's taking to plan, especially a new program, if we want to do it well, and for us, when we were talking about it, and we're talking about Groton not always being consistent, Wit and Wisdom, I feel like, even just talking with colleagues, sharing the results and everything that we did too, I think it's going to help Groton become more uniform across all of the elementaries. And it's also going to make us stay uniform, whereas like EL, we might start strong and then be like, oh, I don't have time to plan this lesson, I'm just gonna do this, or I'm gonna just do that. So I think that by having a program that is going to help teachers be able to still give that quality instruction, but not have to take away from planning all the other subjects and all the other meetings and everything else that we have to do, is gonna be really key for us also.
Thank you.
Dave, oh, I'm sorry. Jay, were you going to
go
say
ahead.
something?
No, it's interesting that everybody sort of thought at the beginning that EL was it, but what I'm hearing from you is it's disorganized, and it sounds like those marginal notations are almost like making up for the content that you found in Wit and Wisdom. It's like they went back and said, well, we don't have all that content, so we better make some, I mean, that's what I'm getting from it, so if I'm understanding where you're going.
Yeah.
Anything on the assessment that you would want to add? The differentiation of the assessment? And granted, it was looking at phonics, phonemic awareness, and the core comprehension piece.
I wasn't on that, in that group, but as far as the assessments, when we talked about it as a team, that's something that we've structured differently, starting this year too and into next year. So although, the assessment for EL was higher than Wit and Wisdom, we feel really confident that the assessments that we've established and put in place this year and that we're going to continue to establish and put in place next year are strong enough that they, combined with the assessments that Wit and Wisdom has, will give us a full picture of each kiddo. So, when you think about DIBELS that we're going to have K to 5, and the assessments, this doesn't reflect necessarily that there weren't good assessments with Wit and Wisdom. It's just that EL possibly had more, but we have a good combination. We feel confident with our assessment combination that we have and that we're moving forward with.
Right, because we can't score DIBELS and other things that we're using now. We could only score just the UFly, Haggerty, and Wit and Wisdom, so we can't take into account things that we're already doing that are working. So that's why the score is different, so.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
That's why I wanted you to speak up about that. Thank you.
Dave, not to put you on the spot. We had a really good conversation about differentiation. You were talking when you were piloting the lessons. You did use the resource, but you want to talk a little bit about how you did it with your kids?
Yeah, no problem. So I took time to try a EL lesson when we first left our initial meeting, and just like some of the other teachers here, I struggled to implement it efficiently. From the teacher prep materials to what the students were asked for, we want the program that's more rigorous for the students, not us. We don't want to drag them along. I'm serious. We want them to be the ones that are in the driver's seat. So to speak to the differentiation component, I think some other people made it clear that one of the program manuals explicitly stated what to do when they thought would be best, and the Wit and Wisdom manual was more dependent on the teacher's finesse and delivery, like you had mentioned before, as to how to best navigate the group in front of them. So for me, when I started to teach the lesson, I had, made sure I'm in line with the manual, ready to go, and knowing the population in front of me allowed me to differentiate based on what was needed. So for some students, instead of looking at the board and copying over some of the notes or definitions we were working on, I took the time just to take something that came from the electronic version, chop it down, fit it to size, and they were able to glue it into their notebook. It didn't explicitly say to do that, but the reason why we all are the professionals, or the mechanic knows what's up with your car when it makes a noise, is because we can look at the group in front of us and understand what's necessary when. So to speak to the component about instructional design, the differentiation issue was really what sunk that score, but the professionalism of the teachers driving the ship are able to see, all right, this is what I need to do based on my 3 English language learners, or this is what I need to do based on my students that don't understand all types of vowel sounds. So the manual itself didn't explicitly state anything, but it was obvious for those that are in the profession and walking through it, all right, I know I need to adjust my delivery here, or I may need to choose a smaller reading passage for my group on my left-hand side of the room because they're not quite where they need to be. So like the finesse, and like Lisa had mentioned, the art part is really where the human element of teaching helps to navigate some of those lower issues. Just to speak to another low area that was part of my group, I was in the blue group as well, and this is the fluency section. The reason why Wit and Wisdom didn't score as efficiently wasn't because they didn't have fluency practice, because we know that's a important part of understanding what you're reading, but it was designed through the curriculum as a homework component. And we just know about all equitable situations are not the same, so to require that extended practice on their own for all students just didn't feel like it was going to be the best practice. So the reason why there's almost a 20-point difference there is due to the fact that the fluency component was being asked to do at home versus something explicitly taught with the teachers. So that's why it was good to have the administration in the meetings with us, because looking at next year's schedule and how we're going to try to be our best versions, it's going to take some specific planning to make sure we can implement all parts of the program.
I think that's a really important part, that knowing, our constituents, and that's for all kids, because let's face it, families at home with all their busyness don't have a lot of time for homework, and to expect that delivery system to happen at home is expecting too much. I mean, we always want kids to read at home, right? But that's the extra reading. So if it's part of the instructional program, we have to find time in our day.
Yeah, and honestly, some of the passages, at least in 5th grade, are pretty rigorous. So to ask a student below grade level to try to tackle something not differentiated for them was another reason where you don't see as close of a score.
I'm going to recognize Bev, and then I have a question for Mr. Sibilia. Bev? And then Ian.
Thank you, Jay. I just want to thank the committee for their hard work. And I know it's hard to pick a program, and no program's going to meet 100% of all our needs. So you picked the program that's going to meet most of our needs. I understand that. I just have a question about the phonics. I see in phonics that we got low scores in grades 3 to 5. How can we as a district improve on those scores to make Wit and Wisdom a better program for us in the phonics department?
I'll take that one. Yeah. You want me to take that one?
Yeah, take that one, Lisa. Go.
Shannon, did you want to talk to it? I'll let you go and then I'll add.
Okay. So we were actually super surprised. I was on the group that did phonics, and we were really surprised when we noticed how low this overall score was for phonics with the Wit and Wisdom with UFly. We are using UFly this year, and we've had so much success with it. But the way that the review tool was set up, like you noticed, it received low scores on the upper grades because UFly, like most phonics programs, was written K to 2. We don't typically have like a section of our day for phonics in the upper grades. And so it made it a little bit confusing for us. We had to have some conversation about what should phonics look like in 5th grade, and 4th and 3rd. So when we were scoring, like, is phonics systematic or is it explicit? It was difficult to answer because we were thinking, well, how explicit is it supposed to be when they're, by 5th grade, they're supposed to be reading and not spending so much time on decoding. And EL education, the reason why it scored a little bit higher is because we saw a little bit more word work in the upper grades with morphology and looking at, prefixes and suffixes. So that could count toward that, that explicit phonics. But I know that, I think someone already mentioned that UFly, as we're using it, has also been a great resource for intervention. And so upper grades and also our special ed team has access to it, and they can use it to bulk up instruction in those areas, which is great because we know that research says that using the same, like, more of the same program is better than bringing in a whole new program. Giving an additional dose that has the same scope and sequence and same routine that kids are used to. So that's another reason why we love UFly so much, is that even though it's not intended for upper grades, it's super easy for someone who needs it to be able to take it and use it as an intervention for upper grades.
So what do you do with students who haven't mastered phonics when they get to grades 3, 4, and 5 then? That's still struggling.
I will say, this is what I've heard of, because I teach first grade, so I can't say firsthand, but the way UFly is written, it's very, very explicit and has a lot of repeated opportunities for practice. So, if a student is not decoding by the end of second grade, then we know that they need a lot more opportunities for practice, and that's exactly what UFly is. Whereas some other phonics programs tend to be more like exploratory, and they're finding them naturally through their books, and the kids for whom reading comes naturally, that works for them, and like the kids who need that really explicit instruction do not access it as well. So basically the way UFly teaches phonics is a super robust, like the students are actively engaged in the spelling and word building and decoding throughout the whole lesson. So I've heard of some people taking the program and just going slower with it for kids who need that additional intervention, but I don't know if there's anyone present that has actually used it who could speak more to that.
So Shannon, I'm going to speak to, and then I'm going to toss it to you, Jackie. So Bev, that's a really great question, because when we look at word work in 3, 4, and 5, in K through 2 should be very strong in phonics and connecting sound to symbol to get kids to learn the code. Then we need to switch to morphology, which is understanding parts of a word in terms of meaning. Now, according to our data, we have pretty large groups of third graders that require more foundational work. That's why we've been doing UFly in third grade, to kind of fill up those holes. Now, in the upper grades, based on data, we also leaned into UFly. So I'm going to toss it to you, Jackie, so you could talk a little bit about that.
Right, yeah, so we have had holes in phonics in the upper grades for a while. So Sarah Beth comes in and she does so she's the reading interventionist. So she comes into my classroom 4 days a week, and we do a phonics lesson with UFly and with all the kiddos. And even if they've known it, it's like good review. If they don't know it, they're learning it, and the kids are actually really applying it. And it's amazing to see, because it's just a quick little lesson, but the kids are engaged. They love it. They love the word chains. They are really applying all the phonics that we're doing. And so hopefully now that hopefully with the reading program that we will be getting and everything, we're going to be continuing with UFly and Haggerty in the younger grades, so there's not going to be those gaps in the next couple of years. I'm going to be getting fifth graders who know their phonics and are ready to be doing that morphology and doing that bigger, deeper word work, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and Bev, it's Sarah Beth Stonehouse, so I work with Jackie. So everything that her and Lisa just said, I think we're very conscious of the fact that we're going to have some grades that will need that, and we're here for them. But we do kind of geek out when we think about like these first graders who have gotten the same systematic explicit phonics instruction, and then next year they're going to get explicit systematic phonics instruction up to third grade. And yes, but when they get to fourth and fifth grade, we're going to see the strengths in their reading and their fluency. But no, it's a very good point. It's a very good question, and we think about it a lot, and we try to do as much as we can as far as intervention, like tier 2 intervention, applying UFly in fourth and fifth grade.
In small groups.
Yeah.
And I
Dave, you spoke to morphology too, but I want you to finish.
Sorry, I just want to go, you made me pop in the idea. So Beth Horler and I, we have book buddies, so with kindergarten and fifth grade, and the kindergartners, it was awesome to see them reading to the fifth graders. Usually, the beginning of the year, the fifth graders are reading it, but they were, one time we went in and they read paragraphs to fifth graders, and it's just kindergartners reading paragraphs, like, that's blowing my mind. I taught kindergarten a while ago, and that wasn't what we were doing then. So it's just really awesome to see these programs starting to work and everything, and just like how amazing these kiddos are doing with their reading and writing, so.
Right. So I want to return to fluency for a moment. What I'm hearing you say is the content is there. It's just that the publisher is suggesting it be done at home.
We're saying
So
no.
that brings up the question, so they do have what you need.
Yes, sir, this is Dave Sibilia again, and I'm sorry, did you want to finish?
I was just going to say, so is this just a matter of our having to change the amount of time we spend in ELA going
Yeah,
forward?
we wanted to grade these hard, that way we were giving it an honest look, and just to that scheduling component where the people above us make the calls on how to structure the timing, going through and finding some of those scheduling conflicts was very helpful then to allow them to adjust the bigger picture, because we've been in one playbook, so to speak, for the last 5 or 6 years, and now as we change the new roadmap, we have to just adjust the way we were doing things. So it's in there.
Okay.
We wanted to just have the score accurately reflect what's required in school during program hours.
And is there anything else that you graded on where their content is there, but their suggestion was to do it as homework, or was that the major?
Yeah, that was the one that really stuck out.
Okay, all right.
You had mentioned the morphology, though. You had seen it in certain components, and maybe not in every component.
Yeah, like I'm at lesson 20 or 21 of a 36 lesson group, like a unit, and the whole study is wordplay and how do parts of word help us better understand what the word means. So, yeah, it's very rigorous. Like I find myself really doing a lot of good teaching to help pull the meaning out behind some of the challenging words.
So that's an example of wit and wisdom and how they are doing it right. I understand, right?
Morphology?
Morphology.
Yeah, there's a significant component of word study and understanding how word parts work together. And just to reference Bev's question, I don't know if she was still on there, there's definitely some learning to read skill that happens in fifth grade for sure. So it's just that next level of folks that might need more extra practice, need you elbow to elbow, sorting the words, looking at patterns, trying to say the pattern sound, different ways to make the same long or short vowel sound. So the reps come for sure, and luckily we already have a program in place that has been helping those practice reps, so we plan to reinforce the previous year's instruction to help get to where we need to be to fill some of those gaps.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Ian?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for all the work you've done, and it sounds like we're in a pretty good spot for the wit and wisdom, and I like the idea that it functions as a compendium with the UFly and Haggerty systems, because I know we already started building a bridge in that direction with those programs, so it's not going to be a shock to the system to make that change. It sounds like also we might need to add a category here based on some of your comments of utility and flexibility. That I would love to see the score on that, because it sounds to me that, the wit and wisdom compendium that we're looking at has a lot of utility and flexibility built into it.
Yeah, I don't mean to speak for the group on that, but the difference in implementation was drastic.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
heard
and
that
then-
loud and clear. I
Right.
heard that loud and clear.
And I definitely can, fully identify and support the idea of like the game time decisions you have to make in the classroom. I mean, that is what I was looking for in the curriculum, was something that would give the most amount of tools and flexibility to on-the-ground teachers in the room. And also it sounds like, as far as like the one negative score with the, or not negative, but the one lower score with the fluency, it sounds like already a solution's in the works as far as like finding a way to adjust the class schedules and the pacing so that allows for the homework component to shift into more classwork.
Exactly.
All right, very good. And also, when I looked at that, I just wanted to, everyone's already kind of covered that as far as like the phonics and, the phonemic awareness components, to me, when I read that graph and I saw the drop-off after, grade 2, That made sense to me, because to me, phonics is fundamental, and that, of course, like the heavy emphasis on that would be in those foundational grades. And then, of course, it's always there as a tool to lean on for anyone that needs interventions moving beyond that. So everything I'm hearing so far is sounding really good. And, I think, and again, I just want to thank you all for the rigor that you've brought to this process.
So I'm going to recognize Andrea and then Beverly.
I just want to thank you again, as everybody has, for coming tonight, because you truly made me understand. I was so concerned at the curriculum committee meeting about that human connection. You said that, and I'm hearing that you're able to combine good parts of this system and then switch over to that where it's necessary. I'm so happy to hear that from you, that the richness of that kind of teaching is here. So thank you very much.
And as we know, this was her subject, so.
Yes. And you must love the.
Again, I don't mean to interrupt, Dave Sibilia, Thames River Doctor. I hope you make it in still.
I'm sorry.
I hope you make it into my room still. We got 18 or so days. Do a little reading together,
You got me hooked.
She likes the writing, too.
Yes.
I know, it's married, yeah.
Yep. Beverly.
Thank you, Jay. Again, I just want to echo what I said before and what Ken said. But I want to say, I'm expecting great results next year.
We want to see growth.
But thank you all.
Yep. Jen.
You got to turn it on.
You got to turn it on.
Microphone.
You have to put it in front of you, please.
I just had a question. What type of supplemental materials are available to send home to parents, if any? Because you know how you said some of it's homework driven, and do parents get anything with this? Especially, I'm thinking as like English as a second language. So do we have material in like Spanish or whatever language that maybe spoken at home? I'm not saying that we're going to have like all like 100 different languages, but just something to supplement the materials.
So you want to mention the second part of the extra manual for the whole English language learner piece?
Yeah, sure. And then, if you had anything you wanted to add. Wit and Wisdom has an entire separate manual to support children that are multilingual learners. I know, it's phenomenal. And it actually correlates directly to the lessons. So it gives you a recommendation for this lesson. There are recommendations for like how to communicate and when to communicate with caregivers. I will also say that throughout the Wit and Wisdom manual, there are recommendations for how to incorporate caregivers into the learning process. Excellent. So that's a huge part of the triangle. So it's definitely going to be critical that it's not just the teachers, it's not just the administration, but it's also the caregivers.
And we've talked about other ways to do this. I know that Margie Gillis had come and worked with Charles Barnum. You know more about that, Amanda. I'll let you speak to that. And then we're doing literacy nights really at each of the schools, but taking some of that information so that they see what the shifts are themselves, the parents. And then I'm even working with the communication department and, of course, our team to say what is the message that we need to get out to the parents on how we are, moving forward. Once the vote is taken and the board is all set with what we've got, it really needs to be communicated next to families so that they know that we're on it and this is what you're going to be seeing, and just give them a heads up and then work with them all year from the classroom teacher's perspective, but the school's perspective and also the district.
And Jen, I'll just add that, once the decision is made official, both the Hill for Literacy and the publisher we choose will help us map out that course of rollout, professional development, communication to families. So So, the Hills role is not over yet just because we choose a program. They continue to help us roll it out.
Perfect, thank you. That's amazing that they have like a total manual for English as a second language, and then that the parents or caregivers were taken into account. So going back, and I know Groton's a diverse community and everything, but it's like parents need to take ownership too. So it can't be all on the teachers' backs and the students' backs and administration. So the more tools we can share with them so that they understand that they play a role in their child's development is something that whatever we can do to help support you, that would be, great, and something that I would even volunteer, even though I'm not an expert on anything.
You're an expert on planning.
And of course, it should be no surprise that the publisher has a website. I wasn't able to study all of it, but I assume they have resources on there.
Yes,
For parents.
they do.
So in addition to whatever, we can send home, probably we can point them toward that.
And we might even have a web page that does some of that and links some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, did you want to add anything, or are you good? Oh, okay.
Adrian? Okay, and then I'm going to go to Adrian. Yep.
Well, one thing that I want to say about the programs, when we were looking at them, is that we're changing our mindset for the kiddos in the way that we're teaching. We used to just give like a toolbox and say, here, go and try to make something with the toolbox. Whereas now we are taking individual tools and showing the kids how to use the tools to help build and make something beautiful. So it's like a totally different shift for all the teachers and everything too. So, have patience with teachers as well with whatever we decide and stuff. But I think from talking with people in my building, everybody's really excited about this change. And they're really excited about making these lessons exciting for the kiddos and everything too.
Adrian?
Yeah. So I want to start by thanking you guys, because it's clear that you did a ton of work in picking this. It's obviously a very important choice, probably one of the, as far as curriculum goes, probably the most important thing that's been done in a long time. Obviously its success is going to be the teachers supporting the program and us supporting the teachers with training and help in the classroom when needed. So I'm really hopeful that the administration will let us know, what that is, if there's anything we as a board can do in supporting it. One of the things, for me, looking at this data from the Hill, it's great and it is in depth. I would have preferred to see like each grade level, like the sections pertaining to each grade level, how well it did. So for kindergarten and first grade and second grade, because, as I'll pick on Shannon, but like kindergarten and first grade is when you learn to read. And if you're not, no pressure on Shannon, but if you're not reading well at the end of first grade, there's statistics to say that you're very likely going to be behind for the rest of your education. So for me personally, I'd love to know that, like, number one, our kindergarten and first grade teachers are really behind this, and how well it would score just there, and maybe by looking at the
scores, yeah.
the colored version of this rather than the black and white, we'll get some more detail into that. But I guess now I will pick on you, Shannon. Do you feel like the kindergarten and first grade teachers are pretty supportive of this choice, like that you've talked to?
Absolutely. And, mostly thinking about the youth flight integrity piece, because they already have already bought into that. And, they're not quite sure what the rest of the Wit and Wisdom program looks like quite yet, but I've heard nothing but good things from K through 2 about youth flight integrity. We've seen great results, and it's exactly what we've been asking for in the past. We've always said, like, they need really explicit instruction in phonics, and the phonics from TC didn't quite give us that. So in terms of what the kids are doing and also in terms of our role, it's so easy to implement and also so effective. And we have like awesome artifacts to show the huge difference. So I really have not heard anyone have much negative to say about that component, which is the foundational piece that you're speaking of. So,
And I don't want to forget about the geodes, too, the geodes for the decodable text. They're beautiful books. We had seen them at one of our travels, visiting schools, and we knew that we had the right to read, and we really decided as a team, leadership team, let's go in and get them in. Let's not wait any more time. Let's go, this is a priority to get these in. And so they work so wonderfully well with both the foundational and then, as we move into the
Susan, can you
Wit and
talk
wisdom.
into the mic? I can't hear you that well.
Oh, they don't talk to me that way either. Usually I have this loud voice. So I was just saying, Beverly, that we have the Geodes decodable text in there as well that we purchased with the right to read money from the state. And they are beautiful books. I've heard only accolades. We've seen them, and they're just very engaging, not like kind of the decodable text we all knew. They really have storyline and character and, and comprehension involved. So I'm hearing really positive things about that as well. So that's another piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. The decodable text is so important. I always think about this girl that I had in the beginning of the year who was just, we didn't have our decodable text out yet, and she was reading like a leveled text, so a lot of words that she wouldn't know the spelling patterns for, and she started crying, and she said, I don't know how to read, and she was so upset. And a couple days later, I had my decodable books, and I knowing, after having assessed her, I knew like what she could decode on her own and what she was still working on, so I gave her a decodable text that would make sense for her, and she just like lit up and was like, oh, I can read this, and she knew all the spelling patterns. And so that to me is like the biggest testimony you could have. And so having more texts like that kids can access while they're still figuring out all the foundational skills is really, really powerful.
I also think another benefit is that, and Shannon, I think you can speak to this, and I know the second grade teachers and the coaches can speak with to this as well. The Geodes decodable text are written with the same exact topics that are covered in Wit and Wisdom.
Yeah, that's true too.
So it aligns, so the topics align. So when we look at the current research around knowledge building, not only during our tier 1, when we're reading text to kids and engaging with conversations and teaching them how to write about what they're reading, they're not only going to be learning that content there, that content is going to then transfer with the geodecodable text. So they'll learn even more about that topic.
And a lot
That was
of
another
social studies.
big sell
Yeah.
that we
lot of-
appreciated.
A lot of social studies, I think, too, we've seen in the program addressed.
All right, so,
Anything else, Adrian?
yeah, just a couple of other questions. So, right now, from what I've heard from a few different parents is, some teachers are sending books home, like in those early grades, on a weekly basis, and some aren't. I don't want to call it a policy, but would it be, become practice that happens in all classrooms for children? So parents will see a book home or a couple of books home every week, on Monday to work on during the week?
So I think, and committee, please feel free to jump in with this. This is a huge shift in methodology for our teachers, for our caregivers, for everyone, in terms of that very much guided instruction. We really won't be doing a lot of go ahead and book shop and go ahead and pick whichever book and that you want to struggle through as you're reading. Kids are going to have choice, but they're going to have much more guided choice in terms of being guided by the teacher, so that the times that they are using for reading, they're actually reading, not just struggling. And they're reading a lot of the text that have also been instructed and taught into by the teacher. That being said, said, the next step is going to be, what is that going to look like when it comes to the practice that's going to be going home? So when we look at wit and wisdom, a lot of the, like we said, the homework is fluency. It's not equitable to expect all kids to do that. Especially because we have so many different situations at home. So we are going to find opportunities to do that clear and explicit fluency practice in school, but that's also going to be something that can be sent home for additional practice. So we are going to be talking about what does that look like? What can the extended practice for home look like? I can't tell you exactly what we're going to do yet because we're not really in it yet. But I will tell you that that's something as a district that we need to have conversations around. What is that going to look like in our classrooms, and what's it going to look like when it comes to going home with caregivers?
But whatever that's going to be, should be common. I think Jackie was alluding to it earlier with a comment. There'll be common practices, which I think is what you're.
That sounds.
Whatever those practices are.
Obviously, kids, if they're getting books home, they need to be books that the kids can already read, because you don't want them to learn bad habits and trying to read above their level. So that's great to hear. I look forward to hearing exactly, or with more detail when we figure that out, what's happening at home.
And it's still okay for grown-ups to read with their kids and read to their kids, because that's another beautiful thing. So, they go to the library together, they might pick a book that the child can't read, but the parent wants to read to the child, so that's still okay.
Yeah, and my hope by trying to bring the parents into this is to try to teach the parents of young children that this is really important, and maybe by focusing on outreach to those kindergarten or pre-K in 1 kids, we can kind of teach the parents along with the children, to focus on how important education is. So and we'll go into this later, but letting parents know exactly where their kids are. So my last question that I have written down anyway is so as far as assessments, there's going to be assessments in wit and wisdom, and then we're doing DIBELS. What else are we doing from K to 8 for ELA assessments?
I can't really speak much to 6 through 8, but I can definitely talk K to 5. So there, we have our benchmark assessment, which is our DIBELS.
Yeah.
The Wit and Wisdom has some really great comprehension assessments and also formative writing assessments. So we will be taking a look at those, and as a district, we will be determining when we are going to give those assessments and how many of those assessments we're going to give. But in addition to that, when we look at the phonemic awareness and phonics, we need to make sure that we're still with our youngest kids doing letter and sound ID, right? That's critical that we keep track of that with our kindergartners. We need to make sure that we have our phonemic awareness or phonological awareness assessments, both of which we already have. Right, we already have in place. We need to make sure that we have a phonic blending or decoding where kids are practicing reading words with certain phonics features. We have that in place. The high frequency words, that kids can read those with automaticity and spell them. We have those in place already. So we're in a good place with what we've been assessing right now to ensure that our kids are making growth and in terms of phonics and phonological awareness and thinking about next steps. The nice thing about what we're getting with Wit and Wisdom is the other part that we didn't have, which is the comprehension and the fluency part. So we are going to have a complete battery of formative assessments that will help us guide our instruction. So I think that's one of the things I'm really excited about, is that piece that was missing.
So when you say we already have it, that's included in DIBELS?
That's DIBELS and our formative assessments. DIBELS is only going to give us so much information as a screener.
What are the formative assessments?
So formative assessments, for example, in kindergarten, letter and sound ID. Right, we give kids letters, we have them identify the letters, capital and lowercase, we also have them identify the sounds. That is a part of DIBELS, but because that's timed, that's not giving us a full picture of what our kids can or can't do. So when we're looking at the dibbles, we're looking at that as a screener, basically saying like, okay, kids are doing really well in this, or this subcategory is concerning. We need to go a little deeper and get more diagnostic than just this. So we need to know what part. Dibbles will also have nonsense word fluency when kids are reading some of those decodable words. What we need to do is, if we're noticing kids are struggling with that, we have to figure out which phonics features are in a good place and which phonics features don't they have in a good place. And Dibbles doesn't get us to that part.
Yep.
Dibbles gives us the, hey, heads up.
Yeah.
You need to take a deeper dive into this child. So those are the assessments that we're in a really good place with right now.
So are those, is there a publisher for those, or how do we know?
So it's kind of, those are assessments we've had within district for a while that we've been using. I don't know exactly the publisher for them,
I would
but
say
I know like,
Brigance.
what was that?
The Brigance is one of the ones that we use for early childhood.
I know the core,
Right.
the core phonics.
Core phonics.
Hegarty for phonemic awareness.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple, and I don't know the other names connected to the assessments.
All right. Is that something that you could get us, for as many people want to see it, but some examples of?
The
Just
formative
detail on-
assessments,
yeah,
to
just
take a
some
look
detail
at
on
what
that.
some of the formative
Yeah.
assessments are? Sure.
I'm just curious, in each grade level.
I think we have a list
What are,
somewhere.
yeah.
We have
What-
the
What exactly
screening
are we
list, yeah.
assessing our kids with?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
I also want to add that our last master class, I wrote about it in board notes, was really focused on that part of the rope that is looking at vocabulary and looking deeply at comprehension. And it was based on Common Core standards, so we still are, a state that is assessed on the core, the Connecticut core. And that's really important in 3, 4, and 5, and getting ready for it prior to that, and then also 6, 7, and 8. So we're all doing interim assessments, we're all doing work around the core, and doing practice assessments and instructing in that way. So I would say that is a big piece of when you think about 3 through 8. But also, all of our interventionists and special educators also have the dibbles, it's the hand-scored dibbles, but they do that with the SRBI process, or the multi-tiered levels of support. So getting more data for kids in reading around that. And of course, you know about the Wilson program and other programs, Orton Gillingham, that actually do a deeper dive when kids do have problems with the reading. So those are just to name a few, right?
Okay. Was there anything else, Adrian?
No.
Okay. Jen?
This is primarily for Susan and administration. So I would like to invite the team back, like in 6 months, once school starts, to see how it's progressing, and I love Jackie's optimism and the entire group of the uniformity that it will bring in Groton, because there is a big perception and that, like different schools have different advantages over others. So like you saying that there's could potentially, bring that into play is really exciting for me, having gone through the Groton system myself a long time ago. So this is for Susan. And you don't need to answer this now, but probably once we're in it, once a decision's made, how are you gonna work with the teachers so that we can ensure and understand that that the kids are receiving that uniformity?
So I would say, like we do all good things, I think professional learning and focusing on one thing at a time. I've promised them that this is a literacy focus. We're not changing other things at the same time. And we really want to do the deep dive, so providing the very best professional learning. And then also the coaching. We have specialists in each of the schools, and they are part coach, part intervention. And they are right by their sides when they're trying out new things. So I don't think there's a bigger gift that I can give to them. And even their administrators have done the deep dive, and really with the master class and being part of this process and going through walkthroughs with Lisa, having Lisa available to all 7 schools. All 5 schools. She's in a school every day and helping and assisting and meeting with groups of teachers. So I really feel like I've got all the players on my team to do this great work. And my job is just to really do my walkthroughs too and listen. Not do the talking, but do the listening. That's my job.
Andrea?
My comment, I guess, is based on something that Jen said. Don't get old. Well, you do get away with murder. You do get away with murder, though, I'll tell you that.
That's true.
At any rate, I took what you said, and my question is, if we're in such a hot spot, such a good spot for everything, then I really want you to come back, and I don't want an answer tonight. I want you to come back in 6 months, just as Jen said. And I guess the question I have is, if we're doing so well, then why is there such a discrepancy in scores? And why are we buying a new system? And why were we called an alliance district?
Can I speak to that, Andrea? I think we're doing really well right now with our phonics and our phonemic awareness, because right now we've got that clear and explicit teaching happening. I'm still concerned that about 50% of our kids are not quite where they need to be yet. So with these changes that we're making systematically across the district, it's going to take a good 2 to 3 years to see that shift and change as we're doing this work with integrity. I think we have work to do as a district, but I think we're off to a really good start.
Thank you. So you think about it and come back in 6 months and tell us how it's manifesting in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I've been kind of deciding when it might be appropriate to say, but like Jen and Adrian, you had mentioned it. And I think all of the teachers, whether they were in the curriculum groups or not, I think it comes down to like making sure that this gets rolled out the right way. When I go back to last year when we were here, and many of you were here, and we showed you UFly, and we talked about like our intention with UFly and how we felt really good about UFly, and we had the teachers, feedback and support. And now here we are a year later, and UFly's, we love it. So I think one of the things that I remember is how close it brought the ELA reading specialists together. So the 5 of us and Lisa, having the time to really collaborate this year, not just to talk about reading, but to get a pulse on every building, to get questions and answers from every building, to make decisions that go to every building, to every administrator, simultaneously. That's our intention with this too. So to Lisa's point, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We want to make sure we roll this out. We want to make sure we roll it out with intention. We want to think about all the different stakeholders, and we want to think about what message we want to give who and when, so that this can be a sustainable program, because I think we really believe in it, and I think we want to keep that unity that we found again when we met together as a curriculum team. We really enjoyed being together and collaborating together. So I think that's one of our intentions. I'm looking at Amanda and Lisa because I know, we've already talked to administration about how dedicated the buildings are to having many of our data team meetings and our team meetings be the curriculum.
Thank you.
So I want to thank all of you for the time you've spent, not only here, but I know you've spent an enormous amount of time evaluating this program. And I think it's so important that it come from the teachers and not come down. We want to hear your feedback before we commit to this program, but we want to know that you have researched it and you are, committed to it. And of course, we need to provide the time and the resources for professional development. And I know we already made that commitment years ago with the TLI days, and I don't know if that will be enough, but, it's definitely an improvement over what it was. And so, but I really appreciate all the time that everybody has spent, even the red team.
I will say there's a lot of teachers that are, and professionals that are part of the committee that are just not on the panel, but they're on
Yes.
right now watching.
Yes, I know. Yes,
We've
I
got a
We're thanking
lot
all of you.
Yes.
Yeah, and if it's okay, I'd like to forward the names of the entire committee
That would be
to the board, just so you know who was involved, because I think it's important. Not everybody was able to join us tonight, but I know they're here in the work, obviously.
And the good thing is it's being recorded, so I think it'll go up on the website, but I was even thinking of a Parent Square message once we're all set, to be able to roll this out and tell parents to take a look and listen as well, and the rest of our school community too, I think.
So again, just to wrap it up, I think the intention is to hopefully get this, after tonight's meeting, the board feels confident to put it on the agenda for next Tuesday night for the official vote. That's all.
Adrian?
I just looked at my other sheet of questions. So
Sheet of questions?
they're going to be quick.
I just am very aware of the fact that our teachers need to be like fresh and ready to
Yeah,
go
back
tomorrow
in the
with their
classroom,
kids.
yes.
So if you have questions for us, absolutely. Are there any questions left for the teachers?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
guys
much.
so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add the piece that last year, we were able to get the U-Fly and the Hagerty rolling at the end of the year, so teachers went home knowing something, and the resources for Wit and Wisdom, we will be able to order ahead of time and get them in the summer because of the funding, thank you. But it also is digitally, so having Lisa meet with the teams before the end of June is really critical, and give them some of the resources to take a look at. I think that's important too, before summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my questions was actually that. One of the teachers had brought up having, hard materials for the
Yes.
summer.
Yes.
And it seemed like maybe that was going to be difficult to accomplish. But to me, personally, if I'm on vacation, I don't look at a computer screen, I would read a book. And it
You're
just
going to read
seems
a
like it's
manual over vacation, Adrian? Come on, come on.
Saddest picture I've ever
in my
seen.
own job. But I would much rather, I love paper, and I find it's way easier to look at the spreadsheet this way than on that.
Yes.
So I can personally appreciate what that teacher was going for. So I guess getting to my question is, can we have hard copies of materials for the teachers, by the end of the year, and if not by the end of the year, where they could pick them up or have them mailed or something like that, so they can, be more, rather than just the software online.
Right.
Be able to have a little bit more interaction with the hard copies.
Yes, so when everything is voted on, and if we are moving forward with Wit and Wisdom, my next step is to meet with the vendors, to talk with them about when can we do this? We've got a quote, let's just make sure we've got all our i's dotted, t's crossed, and how quickly of a turnaround can we get when it comes to resources. I'm not 100% sure, and we did ask when we had the publisher roundtable, how quickly is the turnaround for paper resources? It's not that fast. We could try, but we could also have the resources delivered and then just let our teachers know, if you happen to be available and want to pick up your first manual, you can. Right, so that we give them that access as soon as we get that access.
Yeah.
And we could try all different things, maybe we can try to get a rush on the teacher's manual as opposed to all the other,
Yeah.
resources, or, like you said, setting up some type of delivery, some way to get it into their hands once we do get it.
All I know is we have to pay for it with $25, FY25 money after July 1.
Well, that is another piece of it, but we'll do, paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
We can get ready to go and push the button July 1.
You know, I know lots of teachers, and they all seem to want to know exactly, everybody's nervous going back to school, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just the kids. So I'm sure that, some of them may be happy to wait until the first day they have to report, but I think lots of them would probably appreciate knowing what they're getting into.
And that's actually starting the day after the vote.
All right.
So
That's
I've
great.
already
Gotta meet.
scheduled time with K through 5 across all 5 buildings. So after the vote, if we're going to move forward, that's what we're going to
We're going to take those last 2.5 to 3 weeks to
meet with.
get to the grade levels, expose them to as much as we can, let them know how they can access the different things online for now, and then hopefully by then we'll know about the physical resources
And we
as
do
well.
have physical manuals for each grade level that we can actually show that grade level. when
I
we
do.
go.
I have the
Kind
samples.
of
Yeah.
show them what it looks like, what they can orient them towards it.
Yes.
And then they can go online, but as soon as we get them in, we can send out notice that they're available, tell them where to pick them up and to come and get them. Or we can have them delivered in their classroom. It depends, though, there's a lot of cleanup during the summer and camps going on.
We'd probably have to do it out of
Lost.
this office and
Yeah,
just
we
have
could do
people
it out
come
of here.
come here.
Yeah. All right, that's great. And then the other question is the schedule for next year. I know that you guys have a lot to do, figure out how your reading specialists are going to pop into, I mean, in the 500 child schools, how many
550.
how many grades, how many kids at each grade level? Like 5 or 6 classrooms for each grade level?
Actually, we have 3 tiers and 4 tiers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the most 4.
4.
All right, so, but either way, if it's a 2-hour session for reading, right? Is something like
About.
that is what we're looking at. I would love to know, from a staffing standpoint, those specialists are going to have time to pop into 4 different classrooms and complete all their Tier 1 and Tier 2 or Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions that they're doing outside, and kind of how that looks. So I know this is a lot to,
It's on the
you're not going to know this now.
Yep.
But I would love for the board to know before the start of school. So maybe I think we go over a lot of stuff in August for like assessments and that kind of thing, but maybe we can throw it in there, or at least be provided some of the insight, just so we know that if we have enough
Yeah.
support.
And those conversations are going to start as quickly as tomorrow, because we have a meeting with the elementary principals.
That's on the agenda to discuss.
It's a big topic, so
is.
it's
Yeah, as you
going
can
to
tell,
take time.
I want to make sure that we have enough support, and if we don't,
Right.
we need to be able to plan for that, because learning to read will hopefully make everything else go better.
Amen.
Amen.
We're reading. All right, agenda item 2.
All right, thank you.
You guys can head out.
Yeah?
Thank you. Unless you want to hear about facilities. We're about to
You
hear
go
what-
for it.
I thought Sam was going to talk more phonics, no?
We might be hearing what,
I can fill you in, too. You got a long ride. Go.
You might excuse me for
Yeah.
2 minutes.
we might be hearing why Sam
me?
was a little late today, or maybe not.
Thank you all so much.
Do we want to know?
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Thank you. Nice job.
Bill, before you go, do you have a second?
Sure.
We lost effort.
Do we want to take like a
Just
3-minute? Okay.
Okay, I'll know where to go.
All right, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Well, good evening.
Well, you tell me.
Yeah, first of all, every time one of Dr. Ackerman's former students comes by and shows up here, she always brags about him. So I'd just like to say that one of those 4 reading teachers that we just spoke to was a student of mine in the 5th grade some years ago. So it's...
Who was that?
With a sense, I can't tell you that right at the moment, because it was many years ago, but, we all have that sense of pride when our students come full circle and do great things in education, so.
That's true.
Fabulous.
Thanks for sharing that.
Excuse me, Sam, could you bring the microphone a little bit closer to you? Thank
Oh,
you.
you're kidding, man.
Nobody's ever complained that I speak too softly before. As the rest of them tonight, I guess. The mics are a little low. Yeah, I can't tell you that it was Amanda Chasen.
Aw. She is a star.
Yeah, so we have, looks like we have Mr. Petrocelli online here tonight. And is anybody else, Eric's on? And is Tanya on as well? I don't see her.
No, Tanya's not on. Dean Petrocelli is on.
Okay, so we have the ed specs for the Charles Bonham roof project, and the second part of that is the ed specs for the potential solar array on that roof. So that was sent to you earlier. I know that Matthew sent some questions ahead of time, and so, Dean, do you want to introduce this for us?
Sure, I can do that. You guys can all see the ed spec in front of you, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so the ed spec is a requirement as part of the state of Connecticut for the reimbursement. And the format of this ed spec is a boilerplate format that the state requires. So if you're questioning why the project rationale and the Long Ridge Plan and the re-roof, that is a format that is required by the state of Connecticut. So we produced this ed spec. The requirement of the ed spec is really to delineate the scope of the project and just to follow the structure that they dictate. So some of the language in there, again, is boilerplate, but really we want to cover what the scope of the project is, but we don't want to cover everything too precise because they hold you to the ed spec. So we want to be clear, but we always want to leave it open in case we need to add some subtle scope in terms of any changes. But generally, I think you're all aware that this is a full roof replacement of about 30,600 square feet. We're taking the existing roof down to the existing deck, putting in new code compliant insulation and a new membrane on top of a cover board. It will be a 20 or 30 year non-prorated warranty. That virtually is an edge-to-edge warranty, which covers the metal, the flashing, the insulation, the membrane, and we're also replacing the roof drains as part of this. The codes have changed since the building was last re-roofed. The energy codes have changed, so the insulation is now at least 5+ inches, which gives us an R of 30. That's the new energy code. The codes also changed in terms of the roof drainage requirements. So you'll see mention in our ed spec that we are proposing to replace the drains. They are covered under the reimbursement, also covered under the warranty. So it makes sense to replace all the flashings, all the metal work, all the perimeter metal, and all the roof drains, as it's all really an integral part of the warranty. We're not touching much in terms of the interior of the building. We do make mention in number 5, interior building environment, that if there are ceiling tiles that are water stained due to the leaks that have been occurring, that will be called out as part of this replacement or part of this renovation. And we also talk about any markings on the wall from water runoff from the roof leaks would be taken care of on a case-by-case basis. We're not touching lighting, we're not touching interior finishes. We do make mention on the HVAC that any rooftop equipment is going to need to be removed and reinstalled. When we flash up to the units, they need to be lifted and/or removed to flash and then reinstalled. We will not be changing or modifying any of the windows. We are addressing or dealing with some plumbing as we connect the roof drains. And FF&E, which is an acronym for fixtures, furniture, and equipment, is not affected. There is no site work. And lastly, on community uses, the state just wants to kind of have a highlight of how the building is used by the district, what agencies use it. We mentioned the PTO, the rec department, summer enrichment, and townwide public meetings. And again, we leave that open as it's included, not limited to. So standard ed spec language, and really it requires you folks to approve this so that this can be advanced up in terms of the application.
So that's for the basic roof.
This is just for the roof, yeah, so we've separated the roof and the PV. This ed spec is now written just around the roof replacement, so we are seeking an RR number from the state, which is again the acronym for roof replacement. So yes, this is just for the roof replacement. The PV will have a standalone separate ed spec.
So Sam, I just want to know, I know that years ago, we had a project where we went through every school that had asbestos, and it was remediated. Was this school ever remediated?
When we do those remediations, they are the floor tiles and any other items that are in classroom spaces or spaces that are occupied within the building. So the roof is a different story. However, Eagle Environmental was hired to do an assessment of asbestos-containing materials on the roof, and according to their report, which I have, it's probably a 20-page report, there were no findings of asbestos in this roof. I know Matthew also asked about that, should anything be found, because I guess you could never say never. Something could pop up as you're taking something apart, but then it would be probably become a change order, and we would look at it at that time. But those things are reimbursable by the state as part of the project.
So you said the floor tiles were replaced in the school. What about the acoustic ceiling tiles? Were those?
Those were not found to be asbestos containing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And so
17 samples were taken at this roof, and all of them came back negative.
Right. One of his questions were about disposal of any hazardous materials, and the ed specs are written usually long before you actually start the project. So that's why the environmental company came out after the ed specs were written, and that's why that comment is in there regarding disposal of any hazardous materials, as well as to cover you for should something pop up that is unexpected or buried and unseen.
Yeah, we do make mention in section 3 of the ed spec, the second bullet, we say the building will be tested and any asbestos will be identified. So that is standard ed spec language. They're looking for the scope in the ed spec. They're never looking for the result of the scope in terms of testing. So they just want to hear that we will be testing. In this case, we already have, but the ed spec language is still accurate as presented.
Anyone with any questions? Adrian?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it's part of this spec, but how are we going to account for other costs, like hiring an HVAC company to come, and a crane, I assume, needs to come to pick up the equipment?
This is all part of the, when we go out to bid, it'll be all part of the bid package.
Yeah, all of the scope associated with the roof replacement, including plumbing, HVAC, even if there's any electrical disconnect, because we need to disconnect electrical if we're moving exhaust fans or rooftop equipment, all that will be part of our final documents, and therefore the one lump sum bid by the roofing contractor, they are obligated to carry those sub-consultants under them as part of the base contract. So it is all included under this one base contract.
Sam, how old is the HVAC that's on the roof that would have to be taken down and put back?
Well, I don't know the exact age of it, but a lot of it is original to the building itself.
And is it
Functioning
still
properly.
functioning?
So
It's functioning
1965.
properly, yes. Well maintained.
I guess they made them better back in the
I
day.
was born in 62, I'm functioning properly.
Yeah, there you go.
Just need oil, right?
Little WD-40.
Beverly?
Lubrication of some sort.
Beverly?
Oh, thank you, Jay. On page 2, what does FF plus E mean?
I'm sorry, repeat that again?
She's asking about the
On
FF&E,
page
the
two.
furniture, fixtures.
Okay.
Equipment.
You're talking about FF&E?
Yes.
Yes, that is an acronym for fixtures, furniture, and equipment, and it is not affected by this project. So desks, chairs, any loose equipment, the state calls FF&E or fixtures, furniture, and equipment. It's all not affected by this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. I'll recognize Jen. Oh, you need to turn on your mic.
Two questions. Should we be concerned about lead? I know we're in the roof, but it's like an older building. And then second, I think in one of the meetings, we had mentioned that even whether we move forward with the solar or not, that we should, as a board, consider approving both so that we don't need to go through this again. Was that like a fair assessment of something you had
Any
mentioned?
materials that are of concern would certainly be looked at the time that we're actually doing the roof project. And regarding the solar portion of this, I think Dean will probably introduce that in just a second, but if there's some concern about whether we move forward on doing solar at this time, then it's one of the questions that Matthew asked was, is this system designed so that it could be used again? It's spec'd out as a ballast system, which means that it's going to be weighted down by block essentially. Very few penetrations in the roof other than to get through to run some cabling, that sort of thing, or something maybe to tie some, to bolt a few things down, but far less than would normally be done in a normal installation or a usual installation.
Yeah, the one change that we do make on PV roofs is our insulation, which is a rigid or closed cell insulation. It's called polyisocyanurate. That polyiso is a standard of 20 psi in terms of its density, and we increased the density of that to a 25 psi, which is what most manufacturers require for ballasted systems. So we do need to make a few tweaks in terms of how we roof and the materials that we use, but we're anticipating that the PV will come, even if it doesn't come now. It's best to build that in. It's a very, very small delta in terms of additional cost to go to 20 to 25. So we just pretty much put it in as a standard on all roofs, as many districts are leaning toward putting PV on either in the near or distant future.
So one of the other questions Matthew asked was regarding what you might do with these panels if we did another building, and they certainly could be removed and reinstalled on a new building if that happened.
Yeah, that's correct. These are going to sit on skids, and they're ballasted, which really is a fancy word for a concrete block that is fitted to the skid that holds these panels down in terms of structurally and wind uplift. So they are readily and easily moved, minus the few minor penetrations. So if you wanted to use these PV panels elsewhere, or if you wanted to take them down in the future, or in the event that a portion of the roof needs to be replaced and the panels still have a life expectancy, obviously the intent is that the panels would be removed and reinstalled after roofing. But this is exactly why the state really wants the PV and the roofing to align. It makes sense. You don't want to put panels on a roof that was roofed 10 or 15 years ago, because everyone knows that in the next 5 to 10 years, they may need to be removed. So the state does want, you as a district to align that project. They actually really require it to be aligned in terms of being installed around the same time. That's how they prefer it to be done. So that's why it's common to have a roof and a PV kind of run parallel, because that's the way the state prefers it for obvious reasons.
Great, thank you, Dean. Dean, do you want to go through the solar, the PV? portion of this?
One more question.
Oops, I'm sorry, hold on.
Is there any masonry interaction, like with flashings or anything like that, or like?
What do you mean?
No,
masonry?
at
Do
this
we have to worry
point,
about
there's-
repointing or anything like that as
Yeah,
far
at this
as?
point, we didn't see any major masonry repointing. There's always going to be some riglets, which is a fancy word for cutting a saw joint into masonry so that we can install new flashing. There's going to be reglets, but in terms of significant masonry or even insignificant, we didn't see any significant repointing or masonry rework that would be required. It's also interesting to note that the state would not reimburse for that even if that were the case. In other words, they consider that to be maintenance and not roof related, only if we can prove that the roof or the energy code or the building code is requiring us to do masonry work, would they consider it to be part of the roof project. But if we had brick spalling and rejointing and repointing that was needed, the state would not reimburse that. They'd still allow you to bid it as a singular project, but they would extract the value of that out of your reimbursement.
Right. And so there is a brick chimney on the side of that building, so when we put the additional insulation in there, it is going to raise that a bit. So they will do a saw cut across there in order to install the flashing over there.
Yeah, that's not regular.
Nothing major, though.
Yeah.
Dean?
Sam, when we talk about state reimbursement, what level of reimbursement are we talking about?
I always use the 50% when we're talking about Groton, depending upon when we go there. I know one of the other projects, we're at 58%, but usually we're in the lower 50%, depending upon the project itself and where the state is at the time. Do you know what the percentage is right now on the roof?
I do not know what Groton's percentage is. Maybe Sam knows exactly what the number is.
Yeah, we're in the 50%, it's just slightly over, up, it could be up to 60%, but it's between 50 and 60%.
Yeah.
Usually on the lower side of that.
I'm curious as to the cost as well, but anything right now would be a number plucked out of the air, so, I mean, a slight exaggeration, so I'll wait. Thanks.
Okay, Dean, if you want to move forward on that, that's good.
Sure. So, yeah, as I indicated, the PV ed spec is in the exact same format as the roof replacement is. You'll notice it has the same headers, the same project rationale, the same long-range plan that describes the project. So item 1 and item 2 are virtually identical for the two. Obviously, the project is the PV install. It's approximately 127 kilowatt system. And obviously, we make mention of that on item number 3. You can scroll down, Sam, or whoever's controlling this. We did have a structural analysis that was performed, and that allowed us to conclude what roofs can accommodate the loading. It's actually called a dead load of these panels. There is additional drift, snow drift that is created by installing these panels. So one of the reasons why we have to analyze it, it isn't just the weight of the panels, but it's actually more significant, the weight of the snow drift that is a byproduct of these panels that are never flush to the roof. They're always obviously angled to get maximum solar orientation. So a structural analysis has been performed. Obviously, we talk about connecting to this existing electrical service. Obviously, that's part of the PV, is tying into the electrical system. There may be some trees, we at least put that into the ed spec, and to analyze if there's any trees that need to be removed to improve that solar gain. That's pretty standard language with any PV project. We talk about the major project components in terms of the modules and the racks, and the shutdown devices and all the data that's required for this system. The roof warranty is not affected by these panels or these skids. We do install additional pads above the roof, below the skids, to provide more protection to the membrane. So again, we talked through all that in this ed spec. And then item 4 through the end is, again, pretty similar, but we talk about the parties that are involved with this project. And then you can scroll down in terms of the attachments. Obviously, the layout of the panels was part of the ed spec that was submitted or will be submitted to the state. And there's a graphic at the end that shows where those panels are proposed to be located. Keep on scrolling. Should be one more. There you go. So that's the section of the roof that's going to get the panels, and that's the kilowatt system that we called for in this ed spec, and that should be the end of it.
Ian?
Just a quick question on the picture. I haven't been up to Barnum in a good bit, so is this a north-south orientation, or what direction are we looking at as far as, is this the north side up here, and this is the south side?
The south side is generally down on your sheet. Shadows normally,
Roughly.
Okay.
shadows are normally on the north side, right? So what you're seeing is the southern exposure is really close to the bottom of the sheet.
So the panels will be angled towards the south, and so one question I would have would be about, I understand there's going to be a lot of weight holding these things down, but we've had increasing storms, increasing intensity of storms, and so I would be curious to see some stats on like rating for wind direction, wind speed and direction, as far as like how they would interact with any sort of severe storms that come into the area. I mean, prevailing directions are usually like northeast to southeast. We get the worst wind coming when the storm comes in strong.
Dean, I'm on the call, Eric Oberg from CSW, so I can talk to the solar.
Sure.
It's another consultant we have.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's different for the codes. They'll have what we have to design the system to for the wind speed, snow loads, and everything will be up to that. And they actually just upped the speeds, I think, in the last couple of years. So everything is pretty current, and the system will be designed based on that, and that'll all be factored in with how much weight or how many ballast blocks, the concrete blocks, will be used. And it's typically about like a 5 PSF system across the board, and that's where the few mechanical attachments will probably come into play, is to make sure that there's extra security. If, say, certain sections need 6 PSF, but we're only allowed 5 due to the weight, there'll be mechanical attachments for that extra security.
All right, so do we have do you know off the top of your head like what the top end rating for the wind speed is?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can quickly look that up. It's different per like town. I know that there's higher wind speeds closer to the shoreline. I think you guys are actually in like the second rated zone, but let me just look it up real quick.
Right, we just finished 2 projects that were closer to the, are in the other zone. higher
Appreciate it.
rated zone. This is a step back from that.
Yep, it's a little further inland. Now, are the solar panels on the middle school the same design as far as being ballasted?
Yes.
No?
Yeah.
All right.
Anybody go up on the roof with us the other day?
I wasn't able to make it.
Nobody in this group?
Yeah, the wind speed is factored for 130 miles per hour.
Ah, all right, thank you.
It's a pretty good storm.
So everything, the panels and the roof will need to meet that wind speed criteria that's dictated from our building code specific to your town. So that is standard protocol with all the roofs that we design.
Thank you.
The difference between what we just did at Groton Middle School and Mystic River is that we don't own the panels. So we have a power purchase agreement with the utility, and they're responsible when they reach end of life for disposal and that sort of thing, and for repairs in between. This, we would have to actually purchase and be responsible for the ultimate disposal. And the other concern is that, so how many years, can you just remind me how many years it's going to take projected of current savings to actually pay for these?
Yeah, so it was about 5 years, I believe, was about the break-even point. And the reason the other schools were the PPA is because they're actually not on Groton Public Utilities, they're on Eversource.
Right.
So the company that provided to you, there's an incentive involved, which lowers, obviously, the cost of the project, and then the utility rate, the effective utility rate is the advantageous for the town. There's nothing like that through Groton Public Utility.
Right.
So with the state grants and the federal reimbursement, the tax credit, that's what makes this project viable, and that would only really be the option of you guys owning it. And then for basically removal, the panels are pretty much warranted for 20 years, and end of life, I mean, you could see them go up to 30 years. We modeled it for 20 years, but that doesn't say that the panels aren't going to produce and keep going for another 10 years. And then the cost to remove it, there are certain items that will maintain value for scrap. So like obviously if you get it removed, there's some cost that you'll be able to recoup with the company because there is value in them like disregard or getting rid of some of the material.
Wire, conduit, things like that that are under.
Yes.
My concern is that we know we need to have a roof to preserve the building, but we're talking about a building that in 5 years, depending on the makeup of the population of Groton, we may not even need this school. And this solar array is designed for this site and could be picked up and moved, but at what expense? I'm just concerned about putting a system that we own on a building that we don't really know how much longer we're going to actually need. I'm fully supportive of what we did at the middle school, and I'd like to see something done with Thames, one of the newer schools, but it's difficult in the Groton Utilities area to get that kind of a deal.
We'd be in the same situation. We would have to own that system at Thames River.
Right.
Yeah, my one comment on that is that there's no plans that I know of that there's going to be any change. So there's no, we don't foresee not needing that building in the next 5 years,
Thames.
correct?
For Thames.
Or for Barnum.
For Charles Barnum.
I mean, we don't know. We've seen a decrease in the number of students in the district to the point where, we've closed many schools. This is really the only legacy school left, and depending on the population in Groton, we may or may not need it. So I'm just concerned about putting this on top of that.
Yeah, I just thought.
Jay, do
like,
we have a cost to this project?
The cost.
Cost for the project, is it broken out into two parts?
The roof portion, the roof itself is just under $1 million, and the PV, Dean, do you have a number on that?
I can, if you give me 1 second, I'm pulling
Eric's
it up.
got it, yeah.
It was in
But
the
there's
presentation.
reimbursement from the state.
Yes.
And it's through the
Yeah,
CIP.
so
Yep.
I'll break it out give me 2 seconds. So, the upfront cost for the solar is about just under $500,000. The state DAS reimbursement, we went with the 59.29%, which was, I believe provided to us, that was like $207,000 back. Then there was a $145,000 tax credit from the federal government. So for the total pocket after the rebates and everything is about $52,000 for the solar, and that
Is that
is
5.2?
just over 4
Eric?
a year.
5.2? 5.2 or 6.2?
Yeah, 52,000.
Okay, 52.
5.2. And then that was just about a 4.1 year payback after everything with the solar, once you get the credits, and then the avoided costs from the utility, and then selling any, or exporting any additional power back to Groton Utility. They have a 3.5 cent export rate.
And just to speak on the topic of whether the school remains or whether it gets replaced, if the situation were that the school would be replaced with a new building, you could move those panels there, they'd be paid for by the time you did it, because even if we started today, it's a minimum of 5 to 6 years by the time you get a new project in the ground, started in the ground.
I'm going to recognize Matthew.
Thank you. I guess you can hear me. I've got a couple of questions. There are a couple of issues. All I can raise is a potential concern, but unfortunately I don't have any solution to the concerns. Again, Jay mentioned that we don't have the same leasing arrangement. If there's maintenance, and I have no idea what the history is of this type of thing in terms of maintenance. You've got supply chain questions. Most of these panels are coming from the Far East, and most of the Far East are coming from China. The good news is there's an oversupply of manufacturing, which means maybe the cost will even be lower than we would have imagined. The bad news is that Chinese industry is going through a major consolidation because of the oversupply. They're shaking out the number of manufacturers. So I don't know how to write a contract, but we need to be really careful that we're getting not only stuff that meets standards of code, but that it's coming from a company that's going to be in business if we need to get any maintenance materials. Then we add to that issue on the supply chain is the political business with certain Far Eastern countries of more tariffs and access to market. So I'm hoping we can get some, if we do this, that we can get some American, or North American anyway, manufacturers to supply the materials. I have no confidence in this area, but I hope you guys who would be doing this will consider that. The other piece that is really not immediately directed is we now have a mandate to review our HVAC systems on the older buildings, and we know what the price tag is just for the analysis. What we don't know is what they're going to find and what that might cost. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I'm wondering, since we're going to be retrofitting the roof to accept a ballast system, whether we do it now or a year from now, whether it might be the prudent thing to wait a year until we find out what our budgetary requests are going to be regarding this HVAC system. No more Art Besser money around. And I guess what I'm hearing you say is that you can assure us that if we do rebuild the building, if we do buy the system, that if we had to replace the building, that we could move these panels to the new building. Anyway, I know I've been wandering, but these pieces are not neatly fitting into a single topic. Thank you.
Well, just a point of information that the roof part of this project has already been approved by the town as a CIP project, so that funding is already there with the town. If we were to include this solar portion of this, we would have to go back to the town and ask them to add that to the project.
Thank you, that helps somewhat. Gentlemen from our consultants, are my questions about the acquisition of Far Eastern equipment and the issues I raised about them, are they of concern to you, or am I whistling up a dark alleyway?
I'd say the biggest concern would be the tariffs. We spec everything out as, Bloomberg has a tier list for companies and their products, and we only use tier 1 products. So that's no issues there, but the tariffs, they were actually announced last week that they're probably going to be putting a tariff on bifacial panels, which we probably will see, but that probably always is lagged 6 months to a year from when they announce it to when it actually sees it. There's actually going to be a lot of influx of panels coming to the States to try and beat the influx or beat the tariffs. The suppliers and distributors will be bringing them in and stockpiling them to maintain the current prices, but we can't predict whether it will be in a year, 6 months. We kind of can only go off what the current market is as of today. So if you guys wanted to go domestic, there would definitely be a price increase. So what the number I gave you for the cost of the project would change. I mean, it wouldn't be drastic, but that line item for the panels would definitely increase. And then if you were to move it to sorry, I know you asked a lot of questions, so I'm trying to remember them all, but I know if you, if say you wanted to move this to another facility, the cost would be you have to pay to take it off the building and then pay to reinstall it, and then there would be additional costs for certain items. You can't keep everything. The conduit you could probably use, the wire, you're probably not going to be pulling it back through the conduit, so the electrical costs would be pretty similar to what they were on the first go around. And then anytime you're touching any equipment, removing it and then reinstalling it, there's chance for breakage. So there would definitely have to be a line item for buying some extra equipment potentially, just based on, again, you're putting it in a truck, moving to a different building, a lot of hands go up and down from the roof to the ground, transporting it back up to a roof. There's always risk involved.
Adrian.
Yeah, so quick question. So we're talking about a 5-year payoff, at which time we wanted to, 'cause to me, it seems like if you're going to put something up, you would just put new stuff up in 10 years. But in 5 years, if we wanted to get rid of these panels, would the value of all that stuff cover the cost of removal? And I realize that's just going to be a guess. But so if they've paid for themselves in 5 years, say we're not going to use this building anymore in 5 years, could we sell all of those panels as 5-year-old panels and inverters and stuff, likely for more than it would cost just to get them off the roof and cap any penetrations?
I don't want to speak to the resale cost of the panels, but so when I was talking with, one of my coworkers earlier, he said that typically if you're gonna remove it and say you were just to scrap all the electrical, the copper, the conduits, that'll cover about 25% of the removal.
Yep, hold on.
Yeah.
What else? Jen?
We don't buy used panels, so I don't know the resale value of panels. So I can't speak to that.
Okay.
Right, but if we were going to move it to another building in town, we would probably, if it were a new building, for instance, for Charles Barnum, you'd include that cost within the cost of the new building, so that would be part of the building project. But again, if you're not doing that and you're just getting rid of them because you can't use them somewhere, that's different, so I don't think it's going to pay for itself there. I mean, you've paid for them, but you're not going to make a lot of money on them. They're not a lot of value to them.
Yeah. This is
Jen, and then Matthew.
a different question. I know the town's going to put panels like at the landfill, right? Are we able to get a benefit off of that? Like lower electricity costs, and then maybe we don't need to worry about these panels. It's because
You mean go to the town and ask them for the money that they're generating from the landfill?
you know what I mean?
Let me understand this.
Yeah, so probably no, but no.
Set this out.
No, so like we're gonna be putting panels, right, at the landfill, right? So our utility costs as a town should go down. And I'm not sure if that's like Eversource or if that's Groton Utilities. I don't know where that falls. But can we, as, probably one of the larger users of electricity, benefit from like a lower rate that the town's going to generate? And maybe we don't need these panels. And everybody's looking at me like, no, we're not going to get any benefit out of it. Wishful thinking on my part.
Matthew?
Yeah, I was just wondering, are there according to present standards and what we know today, are there any materials in the solar panel array that would be classified as hazmat materials that when we eventually dispose of it, that we would avoid an unfortunate surprise by knowing about now?
No, there are no materials. Eric can answer that, but there are no materials that are considered hazmat.
Okay, thank you, that's reassuring.
It's considered e-waste, and it would have to be disposed of as e-waste, which again, you'd pay for that. But certainly not at the same rate as hazmat material.
All right. Any other questions? Obviously, we have a few things to think about.
It's nice that you broke it up, though, into these two parts.
Yes.
Thank you for restructuring this, so we could look at each individual part.
Right.
And consider the whole.
Yes.
One more question, Jay.
Okay.
A timeline.
Well, it's not going to happen this summer. The plan would, at this point, would be to get ready to do it next summer or seasonal break. And it would be done within that time frame while school is out.
So is it possible, as a follow-up question, is it possible to vote to approve the project with both components, since we have a number of months before we would actually be beginning the project and writing this stuff up, so that we could do a little bit more research and see if there are how we feel about the building and wrapping it into another building project? I don't want to postpone it for the sake of postponing it, but there's just, I don't know what my colleagues feel. Can my colleagues voice their concern about the timing of this?
Well, approving the ed specs wouldn't necessarily mean that you had to do the project at that point. I think Jay already brought up the potential for delaying the PV addition to a year beyond after the roof is done. The roof certainly could be, it's beyond its life expectancy, and the roof definitely needs to be done. And it's reimbursable right now, and the PV could be done a year later if that's what you choose to do.
But this is year 3, I think, of the CIP, and we have to get it done in 5 years, right?
Well, we've already started spending money on that because we hired Mr. Petruccelli
Okay.
to do some plans and some other things. So we've already started using
Okay.
the CIP money.
And you had to buy buckets.
I'm sorry?
You had to buy buckets.
Yes.
Roof leak buckets.
Oh.
Got it. Got it. All right. Very good. Well, we have time to think about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us and explaining this.
Yes.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
Yeah, you as well.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, guys.
Do we have anything else for facilities?
Say no.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
Was that a different consultant? I think the solar panel person was the same person who presented like 2 months ago, but was the person who just joined us, Dean, is he different than the guy from California, right?
Dean is the architect. He's Silver Petruccelli. So he's
Okay.
the architect on the project.
And the person who presented
Eric Oberg is the engineer regarding the solar panels.
the solar panels, but there was somebody from California who presented like 2 months ago. Everybody was commenting on it, that he was from California, and I just don't understand, like, did we switch?
I think you're probably talking about Rick Norris, who is our employee that was in California at the time.
Okay, got it. I was just trying to understand, like, because I know the solar panel person was the same. I know Dean was different, so I was just trying to understand who the players were and if we switched, like, vendors in between presenting.
No, they're the same folks.
Yeah, Rick
Okay.
Morris is just our consultant for building projects. He
We were
is,
dealing with the Green Bank previously, and now we're dealing with an architect. So the Green Bank helped us design those projects at Mystic River and the Groton Middle School, and now we have to hire an architect to do this project.
To do it,
Because
okay.
it's outside of, it's within Groton Utilities area, so.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
anything else for facilities?
Yeah, just a quick question on the middle school scoreboard, any update on when that might be going in?
I don't have an update right now, but I'll try and get something for you next week.
Appreciate it.
Was there anything you wanted to share about this afternoon, or no?
No, nothing, no, it wasn't, well, it was kind of, I mean, we had a blockage at Fitch High School in this, in one of the sewer lines. We worked on it for 2 or 3 days last week, definitely Thursday and Friday. We were unable to do it with the equipment we had.
Yep.
So I had to call in an outside firm that came this afternoon and took care of it with some heavy-duty equipment.
Did it work?
It's, yeah, this toilet flushed.
And how much does it cost to make?
It was backing up, and believe it or not, it was, when somebody used the toilet in another section, it actually backed up in the wood shop, and
Oh,
which,
God.
The system became interactive.
All right.
Another property cost?
Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to discussion of bylaw 9324. I'm not sure why this is back at the COW. I think this was at policy.
We did talk about it at policy, but originally we were going to discuss it at COW, and since it's going for a first read at the regular meeting, we wanted to be able to discuss it at the COW and just explain to the board what the difference is. It's really the same policy that, you know, we had created 9324, so if we go to the green, that's the only difference. And it was just around recording, broadcasting a meeting, so.
One question, and maybe Dean might be able to speak to this, is the word ensure. So the proposed addition has the Board of Education shall ensure that all regular committee of the whole or subcommittee meetings are recorded, excluding any portion of any meeting that is an executive session, and any such recording is posted on the district's online video content channel or internet website and made available for the public to listen to, view, and copy. So a lot of that language came directly from state language regarding, publication of meetings. And but there was some question about the word ensure.
Shall ensure.
Or shall ensure versus, do we want to soften that language at all? Or, personally, I barring any technological failures, I guess, I don't know, I was not concerned with that word, so I would defer to someone who was concerned with that word to explain the concern.
Shall endeavor?
Thank you. First of all,
I think
Shall
Matthew.
endeavor to ensure. I didn't see his hand, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matthew.
I was just waiting. The reason we brought it back to you today is because Susan requested that we do that. I had previously spoken to Bev about, whether she'd be able to come to the meeting. She said she might not be able to, but to go ahead without her. So we were prepared to act on this, but Susan did want to bring it back to the board, and as a matter of courtesy, we certainly inclined to that. My concern with the word shall ensure is that it is directive. I do not want to expose our district to, if we have an equipment failure, if we're not able to record a meeting for whatever reason, that we are not liable to somebody saying, you said you would do it, that you shall ensure you didn't do it. I'd just rather avoid that. I would suggest the word shall endeavor. Or shall endeavor to ensure.
That's too many words.
I want to get a marshmallow word in there to protect our district. But we also thought that as long as we're coming to the full cow, Dean is our resident legal guru. I'd love to hear what he has to say, and we'll be guided by it.
I am just a man.
Do you charge by the 15-minute increment or the 5?
6-minute increments.
6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Okay.
No, actually, I keep track of all, even the seconds. That's the way the clock runs, boys. I've been thinking about how to reword this. I probably should have thought of it longer. Because you're right. I don't expect, but you never know. Somebody might say, you've committed to recording, so either there was no recording or the recording is terrible, can't hear the sound, didn't come through. Mm-hmm. It's like you never recorded it. You failed us, the public. So this should say, basically, meetings shall be recorded. I would think that if you just said the meetings shall be recorded, skip the whole Board of Education shall ensure, endeavor, attempt, and all that. Meetings shall be recorded. There's usually, in times past, an understanding that the implication is that to the extent you could, to the extent the equipment worked, 99 times out of 100 it would, but maybe you have one of those nights. But, there's sort of a common understanding. This is why contracts are no longer a page long. They're run into 100 pages because we can't make any assumptions anymore. I can't assume that the other person knows that if you see this pronoun, it means the other pronoun as well, and so on. So it's all in there. So in that spirit, this should probably be rewritten. Now, how do we write it?
I like what you said.
May I continue? Bev and Ian, would you be comfortable in my offering a subcontract to Dean to come up with the legal verbiage?
I think we just hit 7 minutes.
Why? did not want.
You got to turn on your mic and bring it close to your
Yes.
mouth and
Right.
and speak up.
We need a lavalier for you.
So then, I know, I should just attach this thing right here. So then, do we even need that comment, because the paragraph right below it is basically what sort of like Dean just said. Proceedings may be recorded, photographed, broadcasted, or recorded and broadcasted by any person or by, I don't know, I know what was the intent.
The difference is that the second paragraph is saying that anyone that shows up at any meeting or is viewing the meeting can record it.
Right.
Now, what the first,
Want something
yeah,
that's prescriptive.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, permission versus prescriptive, that's good.
So far, our regular meetings and committee of the wholes have been, in practice, this applies. The subcommittees have been really dependent on the chair or what people want, you know? So it sounds like we're trying to make it more systematic. And you're right, there could be, we've experienced technology failures in every single one of those type of meetings for different reasons, you know, it could happen. So, I mean, I like
We
that
just said we will record all meetings.
Well, it's also the record
We'll record all
and
regular
publish.
committee.
I guess, so if I could just jump in there, and the reason I think it was phrased that way was because there's a two-part combination of actions here, where there's, the meetings are being recorded and then published on the website or YouTube channel, such as it is. So we could rephrase this and have like record and publish, but that gets kind of clunky. I'd have to kind of.
It says, and any such recording is posted, and that's already there, it's covered for that. If we
You know what? I like the idea of the Board of Education should endeavor, or shall endeavor, because that takes out, that we're gonna do it all the time, we're gonna try to do it all the time. So, should endeavor means we're gonna try to do it all the time.
To the extent technically feasible.
Right, Matthew?
I second that motion.
I second that emotion.
Well, then you didn't hear the segue from Dean, dependent on technology working.
Actually,
We will endeavor. If we fail, it will be a failure, but it will not be a violation of trust.
I do have a question, in my own way.
Yes. As long as you don't try to adjourn.
Does common sense mean anything to you?
So tell us it. Tell us what you think.
That's it.
Oh,
I try to tell them that, Andrea, but years of practice.
Actually, I was just looking at it. I think I may have the solution.
Okay, good, go for it.
Are you able to edit up there in real time?
Sorry, no, it's a PDF.
Okay.
I'm trying to.
All right, so if we replace ensure with the word record, and then we cancel out or delete the word that, and then
Which that, where's,
shall ensure that,
oh, I got it.
right, the Board of Education shall record all regular committee of the whole or and subcommittee meetings, comma, delete recorded, excluding any portion of any meeting that is an executive session, comma, and any such recording, and then the rest of it would just finish off the way it is. So if we just replace ensure with record, and delete that, change out or for and then delete are and recorded, I think that might do the trick.
Now, I don't think so, because you're still saying that we shall do that. I still like Matthew's idea of shall endeavor, because that means we're going to try to do it to the best of our ability. If you just say shall, that means you're gonna do it, you shall do it. There's no wiggle room. And the word is never.
What we just turned this into is a meeting of the policy committee with all the back and forth that every committee has. So I agree with Bev. I'd like to move ahead, and we will make that change and get it for a first reading next week. And if people want to make any other changes, we can deal with it then. But this is the reason why I don't like to have policy committee or committee meetings of the committee of the whole. Let each policy do its work and bring its recommendations.
Okay. Any other comments on this item?
Yeah, wasn't this the recommendation of the policy committee, Matthew?
No, Susan didn't want us to take a vote. She said she wanted to discuss it here. That's why we didn't do it.
Well,
We didn't take a vote.
I think that originally we were asked to bring it to the COW, and then it went to policy. So I just think that the ask was for it to be discussed.
No, you know what? I think there's a misunderstanding because I asked it to come to COW just to see if we wanted a policy on this, not to go over the policy.
Okay.
Do we want a policy on this? Yes or no? That's all. When I said bring it to COW, it wasn't to develop the policy, it was to say, does the board want to have a policy on this? It's not a state mandated policy. So do we want to have a policy on this? So I thought you and Ian already decided on this little, this paragraph, and you would just bring it to the committee of the whole for whatever reason. I don't know.
I recall
Well, let's just
discussing
move
this.
ahead and make progress.
I did recall discussing this at a COW, and the consensus was that everyone seemed to be in agreement to study it, and that's why I sent it to policy. So now policy can send it to the main meeting for a first reading, and in the meantime, we can all think deep thoughts.
If there are any changes, just send them to Erica.
Roger that.
So, reviewing the referral tracking sheet, since this tracking sheet, since we last saw it, we've added discussion regarding adding board member receipt of communications at every meeting. That was Ian's suggestion in an email. So that's a future COW topic. Beverly would like to discuss having board members on hiring committees for, I believe, was it vice principal and above, Beverly?
Away.
Oh, okay. And then she also wanted to add a discussion about grade reform.
Grade reform?
Yes.
What is exactly?
Apparently, there's a move afoot in the legislature to reform the way that we grade in schools, grade student performance, and so she wants to get ahead of that.
Pass, fail.
So I'm not exactly sure what the...
The legislators are basically telling us how to do our business.
Yep.
Nice.
So.
I'm back again, hold tight.
Yeah.
Grade reform.
Yes.
I just want to have a discussion with the teachers. Is the way we do grading, is it equitable? Are we doing it the right way? Should we try to, is there a different way to do grading than the way we're doing it now? Hold on, I'm out of breath. I could go on about it, but I just want to see how the teachers are doing grading. Are they doing an average, and that's the grade? Because is that fair to students if they get a D at the beginning of the school year, but at the end of the school year they're up to A, but you take the average and they get a C plus, you're not really showing the growth of the student. So I just want to have a discussion because the state is talking about grade reform.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a good thing to share with the board, Beverly, how we do grading. We do basically standard base in the elementary, show you what that looks like. And then middle school, what's happening, and there's an MYP scoring device that we use, but it's kind of a very traditional grade that goes on the report card. And then high school is also very traditional.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to get away maybe, Susan, from that traditional grading.
Yeah.
And doing an average.
Yeah, I understand that. And zeros really are not our hero when it comes to grading.
Right.
And I also mentioned, Bev, you want to have a discussion about board members on hiring committees. And I think you wanted vice principal and above or something?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Is that on here somewhere?
Well, I'm just reading into the
Okay,
record, and I'm going
okay.
to send it to Joyce. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to the referral list? Obviously, you can also email them.
I guess I would like to ask Andrea, we had talked about curriculum committee involvement with the staff curriculum committee. Should that be, would you like?
You're right, I was just looking at the clock.
So should we
But,
put something
I can
like
send
that on there?
I can send that to you and to Jay.
All right, yeah.
Are you talking about curriculum council, curriculum instruction council, which is the
No.
staff?
We were talking about going to workshops and being involved at a level that, where teachers are meeting with the consultants from companies that we're going to hire, or companies that we're going to buy things from. So our money is going out there. And not only that, but, we have to, as long as we perpetuate this idea that there's a rift between the teachers and the Board of Ed, it's going to continue. And we just have to stop that nonsense, because there's not one of us here that's sitting here that has any idea of degrading teachers. We're all, I have said this so many times, we're all in this together, all for kids. And as long as we perpetuate the idea that there's a rift, there's going to continue to be one, and we need to talk about that.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I thought we had a fantastic relationship with the teachers this evening, but if you're talking about going to every meeting that faculty have, I just don't know that.
I'm going to use that, I'm going to ask that question that I asked you before. Does common sense mean anything to you?
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's a future discussion. Is there anything else?
Yes, Jake?
Yes. And again, email is always open, 24 hours a day.
We have an item that I made, and I'm wondering if it's a duplication, discussion of a board retreat to discuss the budget planning process for next year. Do we need that if we're going to have a committee working on that? Is that a duplicative?
I mean, we can keep it as a placeholder. It certainly could be a topic at a future retreat. Maybe we could get a interim
Okay,
report or
that's
something.
fine.
Yeah, so.
Well, that actually does prompt a question on my end as far as the, we talked about forming a budget procedure ad hoc committee. And with the goal of starting our work June 1st. What's the progress on that?
Yep, I am working on that, so we'll have some updates very soon.
Okay.
It'd also be good to get a business manager so that and new software,
Yeah.
so we can look at it, kind of strategically. Like that might impact
Yeah.
us.
Okay, any other referrals? Hearing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, unless there's any objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank